They dragged her through the mud like an animal. Chains bit into her flesh. The village screamed for blood. Poppy Ashvale, half human, half wolf, accused of murder, knew she was innocent. But no one believes a cursed creature. Now standing before the brutal Alpha King, she has only one choice: die immediately or step into a darkness from which no one has returned alive. Stay until the end to see how Poppy survives. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from. The iron bit into her wrists so deep she could taste copper in the back of her throat. Not from the chains, from biting her own tongue to keep from screaming. Poppy Ashvale had learned years ago that screaming only made them angrier. The village square stank of rotting vegetables and fear sweat. Hers, mostly. But also theirs. The crowd pressing in with their torches and their self-righteous fury, convinced they were about to watch justice done. Monster. Killer. Burn the wolf, bitch. The words crashed over her like waves, each one designed to drown her a little more. Poppy kept her head down, hood pulled low despite the hands that had tried to rip it away. The coarse fabric was all that stood between her and their hatred, between the thing she'd become and the girl she used to be. Used to be. Past tense. That girl was dead. Move it, freak! The guard behind her, Marcus, she thought his name was, though she'd stopped learning their names after the first dozen who'd spat on her, shoved her forward hard enough that she stumbled. The chains between her ankles caught, and she went down on one knee in the mud. The crowd roared its approval. Poppy didn't try to get up. What was the point? They'd just knock her down again. Instead, she stayed there, breathing through her nose, counting the seconds until the next blow came. 1, 2, 3. The boot caught her in the ribs, not as hard as it could have been, but hard enough to remind her that she was property now. Evidence. A thing to be paraded and destroyed. Get up, Marcus snarled. The Alpha King's waiting, and he doesn't like to be kept. The Alpha King. Even his title tasted like ash and iron. Poppy had never seen him, few commoners had, but the stories were enough. Darius Wolfborn, they called him. The man who'd unified the northern territories by throat and claw, who'd killed his own father to claim the throne, who ruled with a brutality that made even the hardest warriors flinch. And now she was being dragged to him like a sacrifice to an angry god. I said get up! Marcus grabbed a fistful of her hair through the hood and yanked. Pain screamed across her scalp, but Poppy bit down on the sound trying to escape. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction, wouldn't give them anything. She forced herself to her feet, swaying slightly. The world tilted, then righted itself. How long since she'd eaten? 3 days? 4? They'd thrown her scraps, literal scraps, the kind you'd toss to a dog, but she'd been too angry to eat them. Too proud. Pride. That's what had gotten her into this mess in the first place. That's better. Marcus released her hair and shoved her forward again, toward the massive stone structure looming at the end of the square. The Alpha's Hall. Once, it had been a cathedral, back before the wolves had taken over, back when humans still believed in gods who gave a damn. Now it was just another monument to power. The crowd parted as they approached, creating a pathway lined with hate. Poppy could feel their eyes on her, boring into the places where her humanity ended and the wolf began. Under the cloak, her hands had thickened into something between paw and palm, claws pushing through where fingernails used to be. Her legs bent wrong at the knee, forcing her into a perpetual half-crouch that made every step agony. The curse had been thorough. Whoever, whatever, had done this to her hadn't wanted her to pass for human. They'd wanted her to be exactly what she was now, a monster that couldn't hide. "Red eyes," someone shouted from the crowd. "Show us your demon eyes." She kept her head down. The eyes were the worst part. The part that had earned her the name they used instead of the one her mother had given her. Red eyes. Like she was a plague, a warning, something to be avoided at all costs. The heavy doors of the Alpha's hall swung open with a groan that sounded almost alive. Beyond them, torchlight flickered against stone walls that seemed to swallow sound. Poppy's heart kicked against her ribs. The human part of her heart, anyway. The wolf part just growled low and constant, a rumble she could feel in her bones. "Inside," Marcus ordered, and for once, Poppy didn't need to be shoved. She walked through those doors on her own 2 feet, because whatever waited in there couldn't be worse than what was behind her. She was wrong. The hall stretched out like a throat, long and narrow, lined with columns that cast shadows thick enough to drown in. At the far end, raised on a dais of black stone, sat a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of midnight. And on that throne, Poppy's breath caught. The Alpha King was younger than she'd expected. Mid-30s, maybe, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so cold. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, eyes the color of winter storms. His hair was dark, pulled back from his face in a way that left nowhere to hide. Everything about him screamed predator, but it was the stillness that terrified her most. He sat there like a statue, barely breathing, watching her approach with the kind of focus a hawk gives a mouse. Assessing, calculating, deciding which bones to break first. The prisoner, Your Majesty. Marcus forced Poppy to her knees at the base of the dais. The stone was cold enough to burn through her thin clothes. The one they call Red Eyes, accused of murdering 6 villagers in Thornwood, caught fleeing the scene with blood on her hands. Lies, Poppy said. Her voice came out rougher than she'd intended, edged with the growl that never quite left anymore. I didn't kill anyone. Marcus backhanded her across the face. You don't speak unless spoken to, mongrel. The taste of blood filled her mouth, her own this time, from a split lip. Poppy spatted onto the pristine floor and met the Alpha King's eyes for the first time. The world stopped. His eyes weren't just winter storms. They were ice breaking over deep water, the moment before you fell through and drowned. And he was looking at her, not through her, not past her, but at her, with an intensity that made her wolf want to bare its throat. Let her speak, he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that made you lean in to listen. Dangerous quiet. Marcus stepped back immediately, hand dropping from Poppy's face. Your Majesty, she's a convicted... I said let her speak. Still quiet, still controlled, but now there was an edge underneath, sharp enough to cut. The guard went silent. The Alpha King rose from his throne with liquid grace and descended the dais steps one at a time. Each footfall echoed in the cavernous space. He moved like violence wrapped in flesh, barely contained, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. He stopped 2 feet away from where Poppy knelt, close enough that she could smell him, pine and smoke, and something metallic that might have been blood. Up close, she could see the scars. They traced his neck, disappeared under his collar. Battle scars. Survival scars. Look at me, he commanded. Poppy raised her head, pushed back her hood with her chained hands. Let him see what she was. The gasps from the guards stationed around the hall were audible. They always were. The first time someone saw her face, they couldn't help themselves. The reaction was written into human DNA, revulsion at the uncanny, at the thing that was almost right but fundamentally wrong. Her face was still recognizably human, but the wolf had claimed its territory. Her eyes were too large, the irises a crimson red that seemed to glow in the torchlight. Her teeth were too sharp, canines pushing against her lips even when her mouth was closed. Her ears had migrated up and back, becoming pointed, furred. Her nose was flatter, wider, nostrils flaring with each breath. She looked like someone's nightmare of what happens when the transformation goes wrong. The Alpha King didn't gasp, didn't flinch. He studied her face the way a scholar studies a text, looking for meaning in every line. Who did this to you? He asked. The question caught her off guard. Not what are you, or how many did you kill, but who did this? Like the curse was something that had been done to her, not something she was. I don't know, Poppy said honestly. I woke up like this 3 months ago, in the woods outside my village. No memory of how I got there or what happened. Convenient, Marcus muttered from behind her. The Alpha King's eyes flicked to the guard, and whatever Marcus saw there made him take a step back. Then those storm-colored eyes returned to Poppy. The villagers say you killed 6 people, tore them apart in the night. They found you standing over the last body with blood on your hands and fur on your skin. What do you say to that? I say they're wrong. Poppy kept her voice level, even though her heart was trying to hammer its way out of her chest. I was trying to help. I heard the screaming and I ran toward it, not away. By the time I got there, they were already dead. But someone had to take the blame, and I'm an easy target. Because of what you are. Because of what they made me. The Alpha King crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. This close, she could see the flecks of silver in his irises, the tight control in every muscle of his face. He was holding himself back from something, violence, maybe, or worse. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. Darius Wolfborn, the Alpha King, killer of his father, unifier of the North. Poppy listed his titles like they were items on a shopping list. Should I keep going, or is that enough? A ghost of something, amusement, surprise, flickered across his face before disappearing. "You're not afraid of me." "I'm terrified of you," Poppy corrected. "But I'm also out of options, so fear doesn't really factor into my decision-making anymore." He studied her for another long moment, then stood, turned his back on her, a power play showing he didn't consider her a threat, and addressed the room at large. "I have a problem," he announced. "My sisters are dying." Poppy blinked. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected him to share anything personal, let alone something that sounded like vulnerability. 6 princesses, he continued, pacing now, hands clasped behind his back, all sick with the same mysterious illness. No healer can cure them, no medicine helps. They grow weaker every day, wasting away despite every effort to save them. And he paused, jaw tightening. "I am running out of time." The hall was silent. Even the torches seemed to hold their breath. "I've had investigators, doctors, priests, witches. All useless. Whatever's killing them operates beyond the reach of conventional understanding." He turned back to face Poppy. "So I've decided to try something unconventional." A cold feeling settled in Poppy's stomach. "You want me to figure out what's killing them? I want you to try." He descended the dais again, stopping in front of her. "You have 1 week. If you can discover the cause of their illness and provide a cure, I will grant you your freedom, full pardon. You can go wherever you want, do whatever you please." "And if I fail?" His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Then you die anyway. So really, you have nothing to lose." Poppy's mind raced. A week to solve a mystery that had stumped every expert in the kingdom. A week to save 6 dying princesses. A week to earn her freedom or confirm her death sentence. It was a terrible deal, the kind of deal desperate people made when they had no other choice. She was that desperate. "I'll need access to the princesses," she said, "and to their rooms, their belongings, anyone who's been in contact with them." "Granted. I'll need freedom of movement within the castle. No chains." The Alpha King glanced at Marcus, who looked like he'd rather eat glass than remove the restraints. "Your Majesty, she's dangerous. She's also my best chance at saving my sisters." Darius cut him off with a gesture. "Remove the chains." Marcus fumbled with the keys, his distaste evident in every movement. The moment the iron fell away, Poppy felt the blood rush back into her hands. She rubbed her wrists, feeling the deep grooves the shackles had left behind. "You'll be under constant guard," Darius added. "Try to escape, and you'll be killed on sight. Try to harm anyone, and you'll be killed slowly. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Poppy said, climbing to her feet. Her legs protested the movement, muscles cramped from kneeling, but she forced herself to stand straight, to meet his eyes without flinching. "Good." He turned to one of the other guards stationed by the door. "Kellen, you're assigned to our guest. Don't let her out of your sight." A younger guard stepped forward, barely old enough to shave, with the kind of earnest face that suggested he still believed in heroism and honor. He looked at Poppy with poorly disguised horror. Great. A babysitter who hated her. This week was off to a fantastic start. "I want to see the princesses now," Poppy said. "Every hour counts." Darius nodded once, sharp and final. "Kellen will take you. But first," he moved closer, invading her space deliberately. Poppy could feel the heat radiating off him, the barely contained power. "Understand this, Red Eyes. Those girls are the only family I have left, the only good thing in this world that I haven't destroyed. If you're lying to me, if this is some elaborate scheme, if you harm them in any way—" His hand shot out faster than she could track and closed around her throat. Not squeezing, just holding, a threat made flesh. "I will make you beg for the death those villagers wanted to give you." Poppy didn't try to pull away, didn't struggle, just looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm not the one who's hurting them." For a heartbeat, they stayed like that, predator and prey, frozen in a tableau of violence that hadn't happened yet. Then Darius released her, stepped back, and gestured toward the door. Prove it. The castle was a maze designed by someone who hated visitors. Kellen led Poppy through corridors that twisted and doubled back on themselves, up staircases that seemed to spiral into infinity, past doors that all looked identical. She tried to memorize the route, left at the tapestry with the dying stag, right at the portrait of someone's angry ancestor, straight through the gallery of weapons, but gave up after the third identical hallway. "How do you not get lost?" she asked Kellen, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since leaving the throne room. He glanced back at her, hand resting on his sword hilt like he expected her to lunge at him any second. "You get used to it, after a few years. I have a week. Then you'll get lost a lot." He didn't sound sympathetic. They climbed another staircase, this one narrow enough that Poppy had to duck to avoid hitting her head on the low ceiling. Her wolf-bent legs made stairs a special kind of torture. Her knees didn't flex the right way anymore, forcing her to take each step at an awkward angle. Kellen noticed her struggling and slowed down, though he tried to make it look like he wasn't. "The princess's quarters are in the North Tower," he said, apparently deciding that silence was worse than talking to a monster. "Furthest point from the main castle. His Majesty wanted them isolated when the illness first started, thought it might be contagious." "Is it?" "No one else has gotten sick, so probably not." He paused at a landing, checking to make sure she was keeping up. "They used to have the whole East Wing, beautiful rooms, overlooking the gardens. But then Princess Cassia, she's the youngest, started sleepwalking. They'd find her in the strangest places, the kitchens, the armory. Once they found her in the dungeons, barefoot and shivering." Poppy's instincts prickled. "Sleepwalking? Are all of them doing it?" "Eventually, yeah. Started with Cassia, then spread to the others one by one. Now all 6 of them do it." Kellen resumed walking, his pace quicker now, like talking about it made him nervous. That's when His Majesty moved them to the tower. Only one way in or out. Easier to keep track of them. "Easier to trap them, you mean?" He shot her a sharp look. "He's trying to protect them." "I'm sure he is." Poppy didn't add that sometimes protection looked a lot like a cage. She'd learned that lesson herself over the past 3 months. They reached a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. 2 guards stood on either side, looking alert despite the late hour. Both of them straightened when they saw Kellen approaching, then tensed when they saw who was with him. "The Alpha King sent her," Kellen said before they could draw their weapons. "She's here to see the princesses." The taller guard, gray-haired and scarred, someone who'd survived long enough to not care about pretense, looked Poppy up and down with open disgust. "This is what we've come to? Letting monsters into the princess's chambers? Do you want to explain to His Majesty why you refused his direct order?" Kellen's voice had an edge now, a hint of the authority he'd grow into if he lived long enough. "Because I'll happily wait here while you go tell him." The gray-haired guard's jaw worked, grinding through words he couldn't say. Finally, he stepped aside and produced a key from his belt. "She tries anything, and I'm putting a sword through her spine. Clear?" "Perfectly," Poppy said. The door swung open on well-oiled hinges, revealing a circular chamber that had been divided into sleeping areas by heavy curtains. Lanterns hung from the ceiling, their light soft and golden, creating an illusion of warmth that the stone walls couldn't quite deliver. And in the beds arranged around the perimeter, 6 young women lay sleeping. Poppy's breath caught. They were beautiful. Even wasted by illness, even pale and drawn, they were stunning in the way that royal blood sometimes produced. Delicate features, long hair spread across silk pillows, bodies that seemed too fragile to contain life. And they were dying. She could smell it, that sweet, sick scent of flesh giving up, of systems shutting down one by one. It clung to the room like a fog. "How long have they been like this?" Poppy asked quietly, moving toward the nearest bed. The princess there, blonde, maybe 19, with dark circles under her eyes, was so still she could have been carved from wax. 3 months, Kellen said from the doorway. "Started the same night you say you woke up cursed." Poppy's head snapped around. "What? What? His Majesty didn't mention that?" Kellen's expression was carefully neutral. "Yeah, same night. The servants found Princess Elara." He gestured to the blonde girl, collapsed in her room the morning after the summer solstice. By the end of the week, all 6 were sick. 3 months. The same night. That couldn't be a coincidence. Poppy approached Alar's bed slowly, aware of Kellen watching her every move. Up close, she could see the princess's chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, could count the pulse fluttering weakly in her throat. She was alive, but barely. "Can I touch her?" Poppy asked. "Why?" "Because I need to examine her. Unless you want me to solve this mystery by staring really hard and hoping for divine inspiration." Kellen hesitated, then nodded once. "Go ahead, but if she wakes up screaming, you'll run me through. I get it." Poppy reached out with her clawed hands and gently lifted Alara's right arm. The princess didn't stir, didn't react at all. The skin was cool to the touch, almost waxy, but it was what Poppy saw underneath that made her freeze. Bruises. Dark purple-black marks circling the princess's wrist like a bracelet, finger-shaped impressions pressed deep into the flesh. "Has anyone else seen these?" Poppy asked, her voice tight. Kellen moved closer, peering at the marks. "No. The physicians examined them during the day. I've never seen bruises like that." Because they weren't there during the day. Poppy was willing to bet these marks appeared at night and faded by morning. She checked the other wrist, same bruises. Then she moved to the next bed, where a dark-haired princess lay in the same death-like sleep. Same bruises on both wrists. Third bed. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. All of them. Every single princess had the same marks, fresh and dark, like someone had grabbed them. Hard. "They're being taken somewhere," Poppy said, more to herself than to Kellen. "Every night. Against their will." "That's impossible. The door is guarded constantly. No one comes in or out except approved personnel." "Then they're not using the door." Poppy circled the room, examining the walls, the floor, the ceiling, looking for anything that seemed out of place. A hidden passage, a loose stone, anything. She found it in the center of the room. A circular design carved into the stone floor, so worn and faded it was almost invisible. But once you knew it was there, once you looked at it from the right angle, you could see it, a pattern that seemed to shift and writhe if you watched too long. Symbols that hurt to look at directly. "What is that?" Kellen had noticed her staring. "I don't know. But I'd bet everything I don't have that it's connected to what's happening to them." Poppy knelt beside the design, careful not to touch it. The air above it felt different, heavier, charged with something that made her wolf recoil and her human skin crawl. Magic. Real magic. Not the hedge witch parlor tricks she'd seen in villages. This was the old kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that demanded payment in blood and bone. "They're not sleepwalking," Poppy said, certainty settling in her gut like a stone. "They're being summoned. Every night something is pulling them through this portal, gateway, whatever it is, taking them somewhere, and it's killing them slowly." "That's insane." "Is it?" Poppy looked up at him. "Is it any more insane than a girl waking up half-wolf with no memory of how it happened? Any more insane than 6 healthy princesses wasting away despite every medical intervention? Sometimes insane is just another word for true." Kellen opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He looked young suddenly, scared, like a kid playing at being a soldier who just realized the monsters were real. "If you're right," he said slowly, "if something is taking them every night, how do we stop it?" Poppy stood, brushing dust from her knees. "We follow them." "Follow them where?" "Wherever this thing leads." She gestured at the carved circle. "If they're being pulled through some kind of magical doorway, then that doorway goes both ways. We wait until they're summoned, and we go through after them." "That's suicide." "Probably." Poppy walked back to Alar's bed and looked down at the dying princess. So young, so fragile, so completely unaware that she was being devoured piece by piece. "But it's the only way to find out what's killing them, and I've got 6 days to solve this or die trying. So really, what's the worst that could happen?" Kellen stared at her like she'd sprouted a second head. "You're serious? Dead serious? Which I will be if I don't figure this out." Poppy moved toward the door. "I need to prepare. What time do they usually start sleepwalking? Midnight? Always midnight?" "Of course it is, because nothing good ever happens at midnight." Poppy paused in the doorway, looking back at the 6 sleeping princesses. I'm going to need supplies, rope, maybe. Definitely a weapon, and something to mark my path so I can find my way back. His Majesty isn't going to agree to arm you. Then His Majesty is going to have to trust that I value my own life enough not to do anything stupid with a weapon. Besides, Poppy held up her clawed hands. I'm already armed. The knife is just a backup. Kellen looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in Poppy's expression must have convinced him it was pointless. He sighed, suddenly looking much older than his years. I'll see what I can do, but if this goes wrong— When this goes wrong, Poppy corrected, I'll be the first one to die, so your conscience can rest easy. She walked out before he could respond, before she could think too hard about what she'd just agreed to do. Follow dying princesses through a magical portal into an unknown realm, fight whatever was killing them, save them or die trying. It was a terrible plan. It was the only plan she had. Fuck. The room they gave her was barely larger than a closet, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the castle where the stones wept condensation and the cold never quite left. A bed that was more board than mattress, a single candle, a chamber pot. Not exactly royal accommodations, but Poppy had slept in worse over the past 3 months. At least the cell had a door she could close. She sat on the bed and tried not to think about what midnight would bring, failed spectacularly. Her mind kept circling back to the carved circle on the floor, to the bruises on the princess's wrists, to the impossible synchronicity of her curse and their illness beginning on the same night. 3 months ago, during the summer solstice, a night when the barrier between worlds grew thin, when magic flowed freely, when things that should stay separate sometimes bled together. What had happened that night? What had she done, or what had been done to her, that had tied her fate to 6 dying princesses? A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Come in," she called, not bothering to hide the exhaustion in her voice. Kellen entered carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. He looked uncomfortable, like he was betraying every instinct by being here. "I brought what you asked for," he said, setting the bundle on the bed. "Rope, climbing spikes, flint, and steel. And this?" He produced a hunting knife from his belt, still in its sheath. "It's not much, but it's sharp. Try not to stab anyone who doesn't deserve it." Poppy took the knife, feeling the weight of it in her palm. Good balance, well-maintained edge, the kind of weapon someone who actually knew how to fight would carry. "Thank you," she said, meaning it. Kellen shifted his weight, clearly wanting to say something but not sure how. Finally, "Why are you doing this? What, trying not to die? Seems pretty self-explanatory." "No, I mean," he gestured vaguely, "you could run, right now. I'd probably let you get a head start before raising the alarm. You could be miles away before anyone caught up." Poppy considered lying, considered feeding him something noble about wanting to help or believing in justice or feeling sympathy for the princesses. But she was too tired for lies. "Because I have nothing left to run to," she said simply. "My family disowned me the moment they saw what I'd become. My village tried to kill me. The whole world thinks I'm a monster who murders people in their sleep. At least here, I have a purpose. At least here, I might be able to prove I'm more than what they made me." Kellen was quiet for a long moment. Then, "For what it's worth, I don't think you're a monster. You don't know me well enough to make that judgment. Maybe not. But monsters don't volunteer to walk into certain death to save strangers. They just don't." He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "Midnight is in 3 hours. I'll come get you." "Kellen?" Poppy called as he started to leave. "That thing you said about letting me run, did you mean it?" He looked back at her, young face serious in the candlelight. "Yeah, I did." "Why?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Because sometimes you have to trust the monster to fight the bigger monster. That's just how the world works." He left before she could respond, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click. Poppy sat in the darkness, turning the knife over in her hands, and wondered what kind of person she'd have to become to survive the night ahead. Masik. Midnight came too quickly and not fast enough. Kellen returned exactly when he'd said he would, his young face set in grim determination. He'd armed himself properly this time, sword at his hip, dagger in his boot, a look in his eyes that said he'd accepted whatever was about to happen. "They're stirring," he said. "We should go." Poppy followed him through the silent castle, every shadow suddenly hostile, every sound potentially dangerous. The rope was coiled over her shoulder. The knife was at her belt. Her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. The guards at the princess's door looked surprised to see them return. The gray-haired one started to protest, but Kellen cut him off. Alpha King's orders. We're observing the sleepwalking phenomenon. If you have a problem with that, take it up with him in the morning. It was a bluff. Poppy could tell by the slight tension in Kellen's shoulders, but it worked. The guards stepped aside, faces skeptical, but not willing to risk Darius's wrath over a point of procedure. Inside, the atmosphere had changed. The princesses were still in their beds, still technically sleeping, but their eyes were open, wide open, staring at nothing with a blankness that made Poppy's skin crawl. They lay perfectly still, barely breathing, like dolls waiting to be animated. Then, as one, they sat up. The synchronization was unnatural. 6 bodies moving in perfect unison, swinging their legs out of bed, standing with the same fluid grace. They wore only their nightgowns, feet bare against the cold stone, hair loose around their shoulders. Jesus, Kellen breathed. The princesses moved toward the center of the room, toward the carved circle that Poppy had found earlier. They formed a ring around it, holding hands, heads tilted back like they were listening to music only they could hear. And then they began to dance. It wasn't like any dance Poppy had ever seen. Their feet moved in patterns that seemed to create the rhythm rather than follow it, tracing shapes that hurt to watch directly. The air above the carved circle began to shimmer, like heat rising from summer pavement. Reality bent. It's opening, Poppy whispered. The gateway. It's opening. The shimmer intensified, became something more solid. A doorway taking shape out of nothing, edges rippling like water, interior dark as a throat. And through that darkness, Poppy could hear something. Music, maybe. Or screaming. Or both at once. The princesses walked toward the portal hand in hand, still moving in that eerie synchronization. Alara went first, stepping through the darkness like it was a beaded curtain. Then the others, one by one, disappearing into that impossible space. Now, Poppy said, grabbing Kellen's arm. Before it closes. Are you insane? We don't know what's on the other side. Exactly. So we're going to find out. She pulled him forward toward the portal that was already starting to fade around the edges. Come on! They ran. Poppy's wolf-bent legs carried her faster than human limbs could, Kellen stumbling to keep up, both of them racing toward a doorway that led to who knew where. The gray-haired guard shouted something behind them, maybe a warning, maybe a curse, but the words were lost as Poppy hit the portal at full speed. The world inverted. Up became down became sideways, became nothing at all. Poppy felt herself falling through colors that had no names, past sounds that predated language, into darkness so complete it had weight and texture. Kellen's hand was torn from her grip. She tried to scream but had no mouth, tried to think but had no mind. And then, ground. Poppy hit solid surface hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. She rolled, instinct taking over, coming up in a crouch with the knife already in her hand. Her wolf senses screamed danger, but from what direction she couldn't tell. Slowly, the world came back into focus. She wasn't in the castle anymore. The sky above was the wrong color, not blue, not black, but something in between, like twilight frozen in amber. Stars hung too low and too bright, pulsing with rhythms that matched no constellation she recognized. The ground beneath her feet was smooth as glass, reflecting that impossible sky, creating the dizzying sensation of standing on nothing. And ahead, in the distance, a palace rose from the mirror surface like a dream someone had carved into stone. Spires that defied physics, walls that seemed to breathe, windows that showed rooms that couldn't possibly fit inside the structure. What the hell is this place? Kellen's voice came from behind her, rough with shock. Poppy turned to find him climbing to his feet, sword drawn, eyes wide as he took in their surroundings. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. He must have hit something during the fall, but he seemed otherwise intact. I don't know, Poppy said honestly. But the princesses went this way. She pointed toward the palace, where 6 figures in white nightgowns were walking in perfect formation, still hand in hand, still moving like puppets on strings. This is a mistake, Kellen said. But he didn't run, didn't suggest going back, just tightened his grip on his sword and started walking. This is a huge, terrible mistake. Probably, Poppy agreed, falling into step beside him. But we're committed now. The journey to the palace should have taken hours. Instead, it took heartbeats. The distance collapsed like an accordion, space behaving by rules that made no sense, and suddenly they were at the gates, massive things made of twisted metal that might have been iron or might have been something else entirely. The princesses walked through without hesitation, passing into a courtyard beyond. Poppy and Kellen followed and found themselves in a nightmare wrapped in beauty. The courtyard was filled with people, or things that looked like people, beautiful beyond reason, dressed in clothes that shimmered and changed with every movement, dancing to music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. They spun and laughed and touched each other with casual intimacy, their movements too fluid, their smiles too wide, their eyes too bright. Fae. The word rose from some deep place in Poppy's memory. These were Fae, the old ones, the dangerous ones, the ones humans had learned to fear and forget in equal measure. And seated on a throne at the far end of the courtyard, watching the dance with eyes that gleamed like cut emeralds, was their king. He was beautiful in the way that poisonous things are beautiful. Sharp features that could have been carved from ice, white hair that fell to his shoulders in waves, a smile that promised everything and nothing. He wore his power like a second skin, casual and absolute. Valerian Thorn. Poppy didn't know how she knew his name, but she knew it the same way she knew to breathe. This was the Fae King. This was the predator at the center of the web, and he was looking directly at her. "Well," he said, his voice carrying over the music like a knife through silk. "This is unexpected." The dancing stopped. Every Fae in the courtyard turned to stare at Poppy and Kellen, their two bright eyes curious and hungry. "A wolf girl and a child soldier," Valerian continued, rising from his throne with serpentine grace. "How delightfully novel. Tell me." He descended the steps, moving closer with each word. "What brings mortal flesh into my realm uninvited?" Poppy stepped forward, putting herself between the Fae King and Kellen. Her wolf growled low in her chest, recognizing a threat her human mind couldn't fully process. "We're here for the princesses," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "The ones you're killing, we're taking them back." Valerian's laughter was like breaking glass, sharp, bright, genuinely amused. "Killing? Oh, my dear misshapen thing. I'm not killing them. I'm dancing with them. They come here every night of their own free will, drawn by music their mortal ears can't quite forget. And when dawn comes, I send them back." His smile widened. "It's not my fault that mortal bodies aren't built to endure Fae revelry. They're so fragile. Let them go." "Can't. They agreed to dance. Agreements matter here more than in your ephemeral world. They're bound until the music stops." He circled her now, predator assessing prey. "But you're something else, aren't you? Not quite wolf, not quite human. Caught between, belonging nowhere. How perfectly tragic. If you don't release them, you'll what?" Valerian stopped circling, stood so close she could smell him, ozone and wildflowers and something ancient. "Fight me? Kill me? Bargain with me? Which particular futility did you have in mind?" Poppy's hand tightened on her knife. The blade felt pathetic suddenly, a child's toy against a god. "I'll make a trade," she said. The words came from some desperate place, some gambler's instinct that told her this was the only play she had. "Me for them. I'll stay, dance in their place, and you let them go home." "Poppy, no!" Kellen started, but she cut him off with a gesture. Valerian's eyes lit up with something that might have been delight or might have been malice. "A trade. How wonderfully old-fashioned. You'd bind yourself to my realm, knowing full well what it would cost, just to save 6 princesses you've never met." "Yes." "Why?" "Because someone should." For a long moment, the Fae King stared at her, reading something in her face that made his expression shift from amusement to something more complex. Interest, maybe. Or respect? Or hunger? "Very well," he said softly. "I accept your trade. You will dance in their place. 3 trials, 3 nights, to prove you're worthy of such a sacrifice. Pass all 3, and the princesses go free. Fail anyone." His smile returned, sharp as a blade. "And you stay here forever, becoming whatever the music makes you." Deal, Poppy said, before she could think about what forever meant. Then let us seal it properly. Valerian extended his hand, palm up, and she saw the silver scar across it, old, faded, but still visible. A deal made long ago. Your blood to mine, your word to mine, your fate to mine. Poppy pulled the knife across her palm without hesitation. The pain was sharp and clean, blood welling up dark against her skin. She pressed her hand to his, felt the impossible cold of fey flesh, felt something lock into place deep in her bones. The world tilted. When it righted itself, Valerian was grinning like he'd won something precious. Welcome to my court, wolf girl. Let the first trial begin. He snapped his fingers, and Poppy's scream was lost in the music as the Fey realm claimed her as its own. The music hit her like a physical force, not sound, but pressure, burrowing into her skull and wrapping around her spine. Poppy's knees buckled, the knife clattered from her hand. She gasped, trying to breathe through the assault, but the air itself had changed, thick with something that tasted like copper and honey and rot all at once. First lesson, Valerian's voice cut through the chaos, smooth as silk over broken glass. The Fey realm doesn't ask permission. It takes what it wants. Poppy forced her eyes open, forced herself to stand despite every instinct screaming at her to curl up and submit. The courtyard had transformed around her. The beautiful dancers were gone, replaced by something rawer. Fey in their true forms, faces too angular, limbs too long, eyes that reflected light like animals caught in torchlight. They circled her, a predator's dance, assessing her worth. What did you do to me? Her voice came out strangled, barely recognizable. Nothing yet. Valerian stood at the edge of the circle, arms crossed, watching her struggle with clinical interest. You're feeling the realm itself. It's deciding whether to digest you or keep you. Most mortals don't last this long. Most mortals don't have wolf in their blood. Poppy straightened, fighting through the pressure. Her curse had always been a burden before. Now it was armor. The wolf part of her recognized this place as territory to be conquered or abandoned, nothing in between. Valerian's eyebrow lifted, the first genuine surprise she'd seen crack his mask. Interesting. You're adapting. Where are the princesses? Poppy scanned the crowd, looking for white nightgowns among the riot of color and flesh. You said they're safe, already returned to their mortal beds, none the wiser. He moved closer, each step deliberate. Which means you and I can focus on what matters. Your first trial. Poppy's hands curled into fists, claws digging into her palms hard enough to draw blood. What kind of trial? The kind that matters here. Truth. The word resonated wrong, carrying weight that made her teeth ache. In my realm, lies are currency, but truth is power. Your trial is simple. Survive 3 questions. Answer each one honestly, completely, holding nothing back. Fail to convince me of your honesty, and you become part of my court permanently. No return, no escape. That's it? Answer 3 questions? His smile was all teeth. Honestly, completely, holding nothing back. The Fae can smell deception the way wolves smell fear, little mongrel. We invented obfuscation. We breathe in half-truths and exhale beautiful poison. You, half-broken, half-wild thing that you are, you think you can play in that arena and walk away whole? Poppy met his eyes, refusing to flinch. Ask your questions. Valerian circled her slowly, a shark testing prey. The other Fae had gone silent, watching with the stillness that predators adopt before a kill. Even the impossible sky seemed to hold its breath. First question, he said softly, stopping directly behind her. She could feel him there, cold radiating off his skin like winter-given form. Why did you really agree to this trade? And don't waste my time with noble sentiment about saving innocence. I want the truth that lives in your marrow. Poppy closed her eyes, reaching for the answer she'd been avoiding since the moment she'd offered herself. The real reason. The ugly one. Because I wanted to matter, she said, the words scraping out of her throat like gravel. My whole life, I was nobody. Daughter number 3 in a family that could barely feed us. Pretty enough to attract attention, not pretty enough to make a good match. Smart enough to know I was trapped, not smart enough to escape it. And then the curse happened, and I went from nobody to monster. From invisible to hunted. She opened her eyes, stared straight ahead at nothing. At least here, Making this deal, I'm the hero of my own story. Even if it's a tragedy, even if I die, I finally matter to someone. Even if it's just as a curiosity to a Fey King playing games with mortal lives. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Valerian laughed, not mockery, but genuine delight. Oh, you beautiful, broken thing. That's the most honest answer I've heard in centuries. He appeared in front of her, moving faster than physics allowed. Most mortals would have dressed it up in pretty words. Duty, honor, love. But you gave me the raw truth, ugly and perfect. Does that mean I passed? First question, yes. His expression shifted, became something harder. But we're just getting started. Second question, and this one cuts deeper. What do you fear most? Not death. Death is too easy, too final. What is the thing that keeps you awake in the dark, that whispers you'll never escape it? Poppy's jaw tightened. This was worse. Death she could handle. Death was clean, simple, over. But this? Becoming the thing they say I am, she whispered. Losing the last piece of humanity I have left. Waking up one day and realizing the monster isn't something that happened to me. It's what I always was underneath, that the curse just revealed the truth. And what? You're holding back. Valerian's voice dropped to something almost gentle, which made it infinitely more dangerous. I can taste the edge of your fear, but you're not giving me the core. Go deeper, wolf girl. What happens after you become the monster? Poppy's breath hitched. Her hands were shaking now, claws fully extended. I'll like it, she forced out. That's what terrifies me. Not becoming the monster, but enjoying it. The freedom, the power, the simplicity of only having instincts instead of conscience. I'm already halfway there. Sometimes when I hunt, when I kill to eat, there's this moment where it feels right, natural, better than anything I felt as human. Her voice cracked. What if the wolf isn't a curse? What if it's just who I was always meant to be, and I spend the rest of my life mourning a humanity that was never real to begin with? The words hung in the air like smoke. Valerian studied her with eyes that seemed to see through flesh to the truths written on her bones. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. Accepted. That fear is real enough to taste. He turned away, paced the perimeter of their circle. But now we come to the question that matters. The one that will determine whether you leave here or stay forever. Poppy braced herself. Whatever was coming would be worse than the first two combined. She could feel it in the way the realm itself seemed to lean closer, hungry for her answer. Third question. Valerian stopped, faced her directly. If you could go back, before the curse, before the murders, before any of this, and choose a different path that led to a quiet life, unremarkable and safe, would you take it? Would you erase everything that brought you here, even knowing what you'd lose? The trap was elegant. Say yes, and she'd be admitting this mattered less than safety, that she'd trade growth for comfort. Say no, and she'd be romanticizing trauma, claiming suffering had value. Either answer could be twisted into a lie. But Valerian had said truth was power here. Raw, ugly, unfiltered truth. I don't know, Poppy said flatly, and that's the honest answer. Part of me, the part that still remembers being human, would erase all of this in a heartbeat. Would take the quiet life, the safe choices, the slow death of unremarkable existence. But another part, the part that's been forged in the last 3 months, knows that suffering carved out space inside me for things I never had before. Strength, purpose, the ability to stare down a Fey King and not piss myself in terror. She took a step toward him, closing the distance he'd created. You want to know if I'd choose this pain again? I don't know. But I know I can't unknow what I've learned, can't unfeel what I've felt. The girl who could have taken that quiet path died the night I woke up cursed. I'm what's left. And maybe that's not better, but it's real. Valerian stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Not the cruel mockery from before, but something genuine that transformed his face into something almost human. You're telling me you don't have an answer, he said slowly, that you're genuinely uncertain about something most mortals would lie about reflexively. Yes, that's either the bravest thing I've heard or the stupidest. Can it be both? His laugh was sharp and surprised. It can indeed. He stepped back, gestured broadly. You pass, Wolf Girl. All 3 questions answered with sufficient honesty to satisfy even my standards. The first trial is complete. The pressure in the air released like a snapping rope. Poppy's knees went weak with relief, but she forced herself to stay standing. Showing weakness now would be suicide. What happens next? She asked. Next? Valerian's smile widened. Next, you rest. The second trial begins at dusk tomorrow. Or what passes for dusk here. Time is fluid in the Fey realm. You'll need your strength. And the princesses? Will return tomorrow night, as they always do, and dance until dawn. Your bargain saves them from the slow death of mortal frailty, but it doesn't break their binding to this place. That would require... He trailed off, studying her with new intensity. Well, let's see if you survive the remaining trials first. A door materialized in the air to Poppy's left, literally formed from nothing, solid wood and iron appearing where empty space had been. Beyond it, she could see a room. Small, sparse, but mercifully enclosed. Your quarters, Valerian said. Such as they are. I'd offer something more luxurious, but mortals tend to go mad in Fey luxury. Better to keep things simple. Poppy didn't move toward the door. Where's Kellen? The boy soldier already returned to the mortal realm. I sent him back the moment you sealed our bargain. He tried to protest, pulled that adorable little sword and everything, but... Valerian shrugged. Mortal steel doesn't work here, and I had no use for him. 1 sacrifice is interesting, 2 is just wasteful. Relief and fury warred in Poppy's chest. Relief that Kellen was safe. Fury that she was now completely alone in a hostile realm with no backup and no escape route. How generous of you, she said through gritted teeth. I thought so. Valerian moved toward her, closing the distance until they were nearly touching. Up close, she could see the inhuman aspects she'd missed before. Pupils that were slightly too vertical. Skin that didn't quite move right when he breathed. The sense that he was wearing his body the way humans wear clothes. A word of advice before you rest. Don't trust anything here, not the food. It will bind you tighter to this realm with every bite. Not the Fae. They will twist your words into chains given half a chance, and especially not me. His voice dropped to a whisper. I am the most dangerous thing in this place, and I have plans for you that go far beyond 3 simple trials. What kind of plans? The kind you'll understand when you're ready to hear them. He stepped back, the moment breaking like glass. Sleep well, Wolf Girl. Tomorrow, things get interesting. He vanished, didn't walk away, didn't fade, just ceased to exist in that space. One moment present, the next gone. Poppy stood alone in the courtyard, surrounded by Fae, who watched her with hunger and curiosity in equal measure. She could feel their eyes on her skin like physical touches, assessing, measuring, calculating her worth. She walked to the door with her head high, refusing to run despite every instinct screaming at her to flee. Stepped through into the small room beyond. The moment she crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind her with a finality that made her heart lurch. The room was exactly what Valerian had promised. Sparse, simple, containing only a narrow bed, a wash basin, and a single window that looked out onto the impossible sky. No decorations, no comfort, just 4 walls and the crushing weight of isolation. Poppy sat on the bed and let herself shake. She'd done it. Survived the first trial. Bought herself more time. Bought the princesses a chance at freedom. But the cost. Her hand still burned where she'd sealed the bargain with blood. She looked down and saw the scar already forming, silver like Valerian's, cutting across her palm in a line that seemed to pulse with its own rhythm. Bound. She was bound to this place now, tied by words and blood and choices she couldn't take back. The wolf in her howled silently, raging against the cage she'd walked into willingly. The human part just felt tired. So tired. But sleep wouldn't come. How could it, knowing that tomorrow brought another trial, another test, another chance to fail and lose herself completely? Poppy lay back on the hard bed and stared at the ceiling, counting her breaths, trying to find some center of calm in the chaos her life had become. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to a sound that didn't belong. Scratching. Soft but persistent coming from the window. Poppy rolled off the bed, grabbed the hunting knife Kellen had given her, somehow still with her despite the journey through realms, and approached the window cautiously. The glass was thick, warped, showing the world outside in funhouse distortions. A face pressed against it from the outside. Poppy's scream died in her throat as she recognized the features. Elara, the eldest princess, the blonde one she'd seen dying in that castle bed. But here now she looked anything but dying. Her eyes were bright, feverish, and her smile was too wide. "Let me in," Elara whispered, voice muffled by the glass. "Please, I need to tell you something important." Every instinct Poppy had screamed trap. Valerian's warning echoed in her skull. "Don't trust anything here. You're supposed to be back in the mortal world," Poppy said, not moving closer. "Safe in your bed." "I came back. Had to warn you." Elara's hand scrabbled at the window frame. "He's lying to you. The trials aren't what you think. He doesn't want to let the princesses go. He wants to keep all of us. Needs us. The music, it feeds on mortal life, and without it, his realm dies." It sounded plausible. Made a terrible kind of sense, which meant it was probably a lie. "If that's true," Poppy said carefully, "why tell me? Why risk coming back?" "Because I'm still human enough to fight it. Still human enough to warn someone before it's too late." Elara's eyes pleaded through the warped glass. "Please, you have to trust me. You have to let me in so I can explain everything." There it was, the hook. "Let me in." Cross the threshold, invite the danger inside. Poppy had been poor, had been cursed, had been hunted and hated, but she'd never been stupid. "No," she said flatly. "Whatever you are, whoever you are, you're not getting in here." Elara's expression twisted. The smile remained, but everything else changed, eyes going from desperate to cold, features sharpening into something predatory. "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." The thing wearing Elara's face hissed, a sound no human throat should produce, and vanished. One moment there, the next gone, leaving only a smear on the glass that might have been condensation or might have been something worse. Poppy backed away from the window, heart hammering. The trial wasn't over. Valerian had said it was complete, but the realm itself was still testing her, still looking for weaknesses to exploit. She wedged the bed against the door, not much of a barricade, but better than nothing, and sat with her back to the wall, knife in hand, waiting for dawn that might never come. Sleep was impossible now. Every shadow held potential danger. Every sound could be an attack. She counted her breaths again, trying to maintain some semblance of control, but her mind kept spiraling to the same dark place. What if Elara had been telling the truth? What if Valerian did plan to keep them all, and these trials were just elaborate torture before the inevitable binding? What if she'd walked into a trap she could never escape? The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Poppy watched the window, watched the door, watched the corners where shadows gathered and seemed to breathe. Nothing attacked. Nothing tried to get in. But the pressure was there, constant. The realm's attention focused on her like a magnifying glass concentrating sunlight. When the knock came at the door, she nearly stabbed through the wood before recognizing the voice. "Wolf girl, time to wake up if you're still alive in there." "Valerian." "Of course." Poppy moved the bed away from the door and opened it to find the Fey King standing in the corridor beyond, looking exactly as he had before. Perfect, cold, dangerous. Behind him stood two other Fey, tall and angular, carrying what looked like clothes. "You survived the night," Valerian observed, gaze flicking to the knife in her hand. "Smart. Most mortals open the door when asked nicely. You must have had something try the window approach. One of the princesses, or something pretending to be one. Probably one of the lesser Fey testing your boundaries. They do that with new arrivals. See how gullible you are before committing resources to breaking you." He gestured to the two behind him. "These are Liz and Thorn. Yes, we share a name. It's not important. They're here to prepare you for the second trial." Poppy looked at the clothes they carried. A dress, she realized. Deep green, elegant, nothing like the ragged travel clothes she wore now. "I'm not wearing that," she said immediately. "You will if you want to survive." Valerian's tone was matter-of-fact. "The second trial takes place in the Court of Mirrors. Appearance matters there. Reality matters. You walk in dressed like a refugee, and the mirrors will reflect what you fear you are. Wear something that makes you feel powerful, and you might stand a chance. I feel powerful in what I'm wearing. Liar. The word was soft but cut like a razor. You feel defensive, armored, protected, none of which will help when you're facing yourself reflected 1,000 times over, each reflection showing a different truth about who you are. Poppy's grip tightened on the knife. And if I refuse? Then you fail the trial before it begins, forfeit our bargain, and become property of my court, permanently. Valerian smiled that sharp smile. Your choice, of course. I'm a firm believer in free will, even when it leads to self-destruction. The trap was elegant again, refuse and lose, accept and potentially lose differently, but at least accepting gave her a fighting chance. Fine, Poppy ground out. I'll wear the dress. Valerian's smile widened. Excellent. Liss, Thorn, assist our guest, and try not to break her. I want her functional for the trial. He left before Poppy could respond, vanishing around a corner that seemed to swallow him whole. The two fae stepped into the room, moving with synchronized grace that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Liss was the taller one, bone-white skin and hair like spilled ink. Thorn was shorter, more compact, with features that seemed to shift between masculine and feminine depending on the angle. Arms up, Liss commanded, her voice musical and cold. Poppy bristled. I can dress myself. Not in fae clothing, you can't. The fabric is woven with glamour. Put it on wrong and it'll strangle you. Thorn moved closer, holding the dress up for inspection. Now arms up, or we do this the hard way. Every muscle in Poppy's body screamed rebellion. Being manhandled, being forced into someone else's idea of what she should be. It was too close to everything she'd endured over the past 3 months. The villagers trying to strip her hood, the guards grabbing her hair, all those hands trying to make her into something manageable. But she needed to survive this. Needed to get through the trial. And sometimes survival meant swallowing pride and accepting help from unlikely sources. She raised her arms. Liss and Thorn worked with efficient precision, stripping away her old clothes and dressing her in the green gown. The fabric felt wrong against her skin, too smooth, too perfect, like wearing liquid instead of cloth. It adjusted itself to her body, conforming to her wolf-bent frame in ways that should have been impossible. When they finally stepped back, Poppy caught her reflection in the window glass and barely recognized herself. The dress transformed her, made her look less like a refugee and more like something dangerous deliberately choosing to appear civilized. The green brought out the red in her eyes, turned them from demonic to striking. The cut of the gown acknowledged her unusual proportions without trying to hide them, working with her curse instead of against it. She looked like she belonged in a fae court, like she could be dangerous. Better, Liss said, approval in her tone. Now you look like something worth keeping. I'm not here to be kept, Poppy snapped. Thorn laughed, sharp and knowing. That's what they all say, at first. Before Poppy could respond, the door opened again, and Valerian returned. His expression when he saw her shifted, just for a moment, just a flicker, into something that might have been appreciation. Much better, he said. Now you're ready. Come. The Court of Mirrors waits for no one, not even honored guests. He turned and walked out, clearly expecting her to follow. Poppy hesitated, looking at Liss and Thorn. Is there anything I should know about the trial? The two fae exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then Liss leaned close, voice dropping to barely a whisper. The mirrors show truth, she breathed. But truth here is fluid. Don't believe everything you see, and whatever you do, don't touch your own reflection. That way lies madness. Not exactly reassuring. Poppy took a breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked out the door into whatever hell awaited her. The Court of Mirrors was exactly what it sounded like, and infinitely worse. Valerian led her through winding corridors that seemed to reshape themselves behind them, making return impossible, until they reached a massive set of double doors. These were different from anything else she'd seen in the Fae realm. Plain wood, unadorned, almost humble in their simplicity. Fair warning, Valerian said, hand on the door handle. What you're about to see will hurt. The mirrors don't lie, but they also don't spare feelings. If you can't handle seeing yourself as you truly are, turn back now and accept your binding to this court. I can handle it, Poppy said with more confidence than she felt. We'll see. He pushed the doors open. The room beyond was infinite. Not large, infinite. Mirrors covered every surface, walls, ceiling, floor, creating an endless recursion of reflections that seemed to stretch into forever. And in each mirror, Poppy saw herself. But wrong. The first reflection showed her as she'd been before the curse, fully human, unremarkable, easily forgotten. That girl looked lost, small, trapped in a life she'd never chosen. The second reflection showed her fully wolf, quadrupedal, savage, nothing human remaining. That creature snarled at her with mindless hunger. The third showed her dead, throat torn out, eyes empty. The fourth showed her laughing, covered in blood that wasn't hers. On and on, each mirror presenting a different truth, a different possibility, a different version of who she was or could become. The assault was overwhelming, each reflection demanding attention, screaming its own validity. "Welcome to the Court of Mirrors," Valerian's voice came from somewhere behind her. "Your second trial is simple. Walk through this room to the door on the opposite side. That's all. Just walk." Poppy tried to move forward and immediately stumbled. The floor was mirrors too, and every reflection showed her standing on different ground, solid stone, empty air, broken glass. Her depth perception screamed contradictions. Her balance failed. She went down on one knee, hands slapping against the mirror floor. The impact should have shattered glass, but instead felt like hitting water. There was give, resistance, but no breaking. And in the mirror beneath her hands, she saw her mother, looking up at her with eyes full of disgust and fear, mouthing words that Poppy could read even without sound. "Monster, abomination, should have drowned you when you were born." The pain was immediate and visceral. Poppy jerked back, but the image followed, spreading to other mirrors, multiplying until everywhere she looked she saw her mother's rejection played out in infinite variations. "Stop," she gasped. "Make it stop." "I can't," Valerian said, and he actually sounded genuine. "The mirrors respond to you, not me. They're showing you what you fear because that's what lives in your heart. You want it to stop. Stop being afraid." Easy for you to say. Actually, it's not. His reflection appeared in one of the mirrors to her left, standing in a room that looked nothing like where they actually were. "I can't enter the Court of Mirrors, not anymore. Used it once, centuries ago, and saw truths that nearly destroyed me. So I send others in my place and watch from outside." His smile was bitter. "Cowardice has many faces. This is one of mine." Poppy forced herself to stand, keeping her eyes on the far door, or where she thought the far door should be. The room seemed to shift with every blink, distances changing, perspectives warping. She took a step forward. Every mirror erupted with new images. Her victims. The people the villagers said she'd killed. 6 faces, twisted in death, accusing her with empty eyes. She'd never met them in life, but she knew their names, knew their stories, knew that someone had slaughtered them and left her to take the blame. "I didn't kill you," she said to the reflections. "I didn't." But doubt crept in. What if she had? What if the wolf took over some night and she'd forgotten? What if the curse made her into exactly what they said she was? "The mirrors don't show lies," Valerian's voice reminded her, "but they don't show objective truth either. They show your truth, your fears made manifest." Poppy closed her eyes, trying to block out the images. But that was worse. In the darkness behind her eyelids, the accusations grew louder, multiplied, became deafening. She opened her eyes and kept walking. More mirrors, more reflections, each one a different horror. Her father turning away from her like she didn't exist. Her sisters laughing as she burned. Darius, the Alpha King, ripping out her throat with his bare hands. Kellen, disgusted, calling her monster. And through it all, scattered among the painful reflections, glimpses of something else. Moments of kindness she'd forgotten. Her mother braiding her hair when she was small, her father teaching her to track deer, her sisters sharing secret jokes in the dark. The good memories hurt worse than the bad ones. They reminded her what she'd lost, what the curse had stolen. Poppy kept walking, one foot in front of the other, not looking at any single reflection too long, but not avoiding them either. Acknowledging each one, accepting it as part of who she was or feared she was, then moving past. The door grew closer, or seemed to. Distance was meaningless here. Then she saw the reflection that stopped her cold, herself. But not twisted, not changed, not warped into some horror or ideal. Just herself. Standing in a mirror, meeting her own eyes, seeing everything she was with brutal clarity. Half human, half wolf, caught between worlds. Scarred, angry, desperate, brave, broken, surviving. Not a monster, not a hero, just a girl trying to navigate a situation that should have killed her already. The reflection reached out. Poppy remembered Lisa's warning, don't touch your own reflection. But the gesture wasn't threatening. It was offered like a hand to someone drowning, a lifeline, a choice. What happens if I take it? She asked. The reflection's mouth moved. Poppy couldn't hear the words, but she could read the lips. You become whole. Everything in Poppy longed for that. To be whole again. To not be split between human and wolf, belonging nowhere, accepted by nothing. To just be. She raised her hand toward the glass. Her fingers were inches from the reflections when Valerian's voice cut through the silence like a whip. Don't. Poppy froze. That's the trap, he continued, urgency replacing his usual cool control. That's how the Court of Mirrors keeps people. It offers you the one thing you want most, and the moment you touch it, you're frozen. Trapped in that mirror forever, living a dream of wholeness that never actually comes. Poppy's hand trembled, still extended. How do you know? Because I tried it, centuries ago, reached for my own reflection, and it took me decades to break free. I'm still not entirely sure I did. His voice dropped. Don't make my mistake, wolf girl. You're broken, yes, but broken things are still functional, still real. Take that reflection's hand and you'll trade reality for comfortable delusion. The reflection's eyes pleaded. Poppy could feel the pull, magnetic and irresistible. It would be so easy, so simple. Just touch the glass and end all the pain, all the struggle, all the impossible choices. But Valerian was right. That wasn't wholeness. That was erasure. Poppy lowered her hand, met her reflection's eyes one last time. I'm sorry, she whispered, but I'd rather be broken and real than perfect and empty. The reflection's face crumpled. For a moment, Poppy thought she saw tears. Impossible, since it was just glass and light. But then the image shattered. Not the mirror itself, just the reflection, breaking apart into fragments that swirled and reformed into something else. Her reflection now showed her moving forward, walking through the court with purpose, reaching the far door. Poppy took the hint. She walked, past more painful reflections, past more temptations, past visions of futures both beautiful and terrible. None of them mattered. They were all just mirrors, showing possibilities, not certainties. The door materialized in front of her like it had always been there, solid and real in a room of illusions. Poppy grabbed the handle, pulled it open, and stepped through, into silence. The Court of Mirrors vanished the moment the door closed behind her. She stood in a simple corridor, breathing hard, sweat soaking through the green dress despite the cool air. Valerian stood waiting, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You passed, he said finally. Most mortals don't make it halfway before touching their reflection. You walked the entire length and resisted the one temptation custom-built to destroy you. Impressive. Poppy's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, sitting hard on the cold floor, trying to remember how to breathe normally. That was the second trial? She gasped. That was the second trial. What's the third? Valerian crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. His expression was complex, respect mixed with something that might have been concern. The third trial is the hardest, he said quietly, because it requires you to choose between saving the princesses or saving yourself, between freedom and belonging, between the world that rejected you and the world that wants to keep you. He reached out, lifted her chin so she had to meet his eyes. The Court of Mirrors showed you who you are. The third trial will show you who you could become. And you'll have to decide which one you want more. Poppy searched his face for deception, for hidden traps, for the angle she was missing, but all she saw was strange sincerity. When? She asked. Tomorrow. One more night to rest, to prepare, to make peace with yourself. He stood, offered her a hand up. She took it. His skin was still cold, still wrong, but the grip was solid. Real. And then you'll face the choice that changes everything. She let him pull her to her feet, swaying slightly. The dress was starting to feel less alien, more like a second skin. What if I choose wrong? She asked. Valerian's smile was sad and knowing. That's the beauty of it, wolf girl. There is no wrong choice. Both options will destroy you in different ways. You just have to decide which destruction you can live with. He left her standing in the corridor, alone with that impossible calculus. Behind her, the door to the Court of Mirrors had vanished, leaving only blank wall. Ahead, the path forward stretched into darkness. And somewhere in between, Poppy had to find the strength to face one more trial, knowing that whatever she chose would define the rest of her life. Or end it. The question was, which fate terrified her more? The night that followed was the longest of Poppy's life. She sat in her sparse room, still wearing the green dress that had somehow become less costume and more armor, staring at the silver scar across her palm. The mark pulsed with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, or maybe her heartbeat had adjusted to match it. She couldn't tell anymore where she ended and the Fey realm began. 2 trials down, 1 to go. And then what? Freedom? Return to a world that wanted her dead? The Alpha King would honor his bargain, she believed that much. But honor didn't mean welcome. Didn't mean home. Home. The word tasted like ash. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Not Valerian's imperious summons, but something gentler, uncertain. "Come in," Poppy called, hand instinctively moving to the knife she'd tucked into the folds of her dress. The door opened to reveal Kellen. Poppy was on her feet before conscious thought caught up. "How? You're supposed to be in the mortal realm. Valerian sent you back." "I came back through." Kellen stepped inside quickly, closing the door behind him. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, a fresh cut across his cheek that hadn't been there before. "Took me all day to find the gateway again, and I almost didn't make it, but I couldn't just leave you here alone." Something warm and painful twisted in Poppy's chest. "You idiot! You beautiful, stupid idiot! If they catch you, let them catch me. You're facing trials that could kill you, and I'm supposed to just go back to the castle and pretend everything's fine?" He moved closer, voice dropping. "The princesses woke up this morning with no memory of being here. They don't know you traded yourself for them. They don't know anything. And the Alpha King—" Kellen's jaw tightened. "He's not telling anyone, keeping it quiet. I think he's waiting to see if you succeed or fail before deciding how to spin the story." Of course he was. Darius Wolfborn didn't become Alpha King by showing his hand early. "You shouldn't have come back," Poppy said, but her voice lacked conviction. Having Kellen here, another mortal in this realm of beautiful predators, made her feel less alone, less lost. "Probably not, but I'm here now, so we might as well make use of it." He pulled something from his jacket, a flask. "Brought you this. Real whiskey from the castle stores. Figured you could use it." Poppy took the flask, uncapped it, and took a long swallow. The burn was glorious, grounding, proof that she was still alive enough to feel pain. "Thank you," she said, handing it back. "For coming back. For being stupid enough to care about a cursed half-wolf you barely know." Kellen took his own drink, wincing at the strength. "You're not just some cursed half-wolf. You're the woman who walked into hell to save 6 strangers. That counts for something." They sat together on the narrow bed, passing the flask back and forth, neither speaking the fears that hung between them like smoke. That tomorrow Poppy might die. That she might succeed but lose herself in the process. That even victory might taste like defeat. "Tell me about the trials," Kellen said finally. "What you've faced so far." So Poppy told him. About the questions that cut to bone. About the Court of Mirrors and the reflections that showed every possible version of herself, broken and whole and everything between. About Valerian's warnings and the choices that loomed ahead. Kellen listened without interrupting, his young face growing harder with each detail. "He's manipulating you," he said when she finished. "All of this, the trials, the questions, the mirrors, he's breaking you down so you'll be easier to keep when the time comes." "I know." "Then why go through with the 3rd trial? Why not—" "Because the alternative is worse." Poppy took another pull from the flask. "I go through with it. I might save the princesses and myself. I refuse. I definitely stay here forever. At least fighting gives me a chance." Kellen's hand found hers squeezed once. His skin was warm, human, blessedly normal. "I'll be there tomorrow," he said. "For the trial. I don't care what Valerian says. I'm not leaving you alone again." Poppy wanted to argue, wanted to protect him from whatever was coming, but the selfish part of her that craved companionship won out. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They sat in silence until exhaustion finally claimed them both, two mortals sleeping back to back in a realm that wanted to devour them, finding what comfort they could in proximity and shared peril. Dawn, or whatever passed for dawn in the Fey realm, came with Valerian's voice outside the door. Wolf girl, the third trial begins in 1 hour. I suggest you prepare yourself. Poppy jerked awake, found Kellen already on his feet, sword drawn and pointed at the door. The boy soldier is still here, Valerian continued, amusement clear in his tone. How touching. He can watch if he likes. Witnessing usually makes the choice harder, but mortals do love their suffering. The door opened before Poppy could respond, revealing the Fey King in all his terrible beauty. He looked at Kellen's drawn sword with something like fondness. Still want to stab me? By all means, try. I haven't had a good laugh in decades. Kellen's grip tightened on the hilt, but Poppy put a hand on his arm. Don't. It won't work, and it'll just make him angrier. Listen to the wolf girl, Valerian advised. She's learning. That's good. She'll need every lesson for what comes next. His eyes moved to Poppy. Are you ready? Does it matter? Not particularly, but I prefer to maintain the illusion of choice. He stepped back, gesturing down the corridor. This way. The court of choices awaits. Poppy stood, smoothed down the green dress that had wrinkled from sleep. Kellen moved to follow, but Valerian raised a hand. The boy stays behind until we arrive. Those are the rules. Your rules, Poppy shot back. My realm. My rules. Don't worry. He'll have a front row seat to your suffering soon enough. Before Kellen could protest, before Poppy could argue, Valerian's hand closed around her wrist. The world lurched, twisted, reformed. They stood in a new chamber. This one was different from the Court of Mirrors. Smaller, more intimate, circular, with a domed ceiling that showed stars that didn't exist in any mortal sky. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal rested two objects. A golden key, ornate and beautiful, practically glowing with power. A simple iron collar, dark and unadorned, radiating cold. The third trial, Valerian said, releasing her wrist and moving to stand beside the pedestal, is about understanding value, about knowing what you want versus what you need versus what you deserve. Poppy approached slowly, eyeing both objects with suspicion. What do they do? The key opens the gateway back to the mortal realm, not just for you, for all of you. You, the boy soldier, the 6 princesses. Take it, and you all go home. Your bargain is fulfilled. The princesses are freed from their knightly binding. You get your pardon from the Alpha King. Everyone wins. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it absolutely was. And the collar? Valerian's expression shifted into something complicated. The collar is my offer to you. Put it on, and you become part of this court, permanently. Fully Fey, no longer caught between forms. The wolf curse breaks, replaced by something cleaner, stronger. You'd have power here, position, purpose. Everything the mortal world denied you. Poppy stared at the two objects, her mind racing through implications. So the choice is freedom for everyone, or power for me? Not quite. Valerian moved closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. The key only works if you've never belonged to this realm, but you sealed a bargain with me, blood to blood, your fate to mine. The moment you take that key, the bargain breaks, violently. It will kill you, slowly, painfully. Over the course of hours, maybe days, your body will tear itself apart from the competing magics. Ice flooded Poppy's veins. You're saying if I choose freedom, you die. Yes, but the others live, the princesses go home, the boy soldier survives, and you become the noble sacrifice you always wanted to be. His smile was sharp. Martyrdom looks good on you, wolf girl. Very dramatic. And the collar? Saves your life, completes your transformation into something that belongs here. You'd be bound to my court, yes, but alive. Powerful. No longer rejected or hunted or broken, just mine. The word hung between them like a blade. Poppy's hands clenched into fists. This is the choice? Die a hero or live as your property? I prefer honored consort, but property works too. Valerian circled the pedestal, trailing fingers across both objects. You wanted to matter, didn't you? Said so yourself in the first trial. Well, here's your chance. Matter as a legend, the girl who saved 6 princesses at the cost of her own life. Or matter as something real and present and powerful. Both choices have value. Both have cost. Poppy's wolf snarled inside her chest, recognizing the trap for what it was. No good options, just varying degrees of destruction. There has to be another way. There isn't. I designed this trial specifically for you, wolf girl. I know what you fear, what you want, what you'll sacrifice. This is the perfect distillation of your character. Die for others or live for yourself. Choose. Before Poppy could respond, the chamber doors burst open and Kellen stumbled through, 2 Fey guards gripping his arms. They threw him to the floor at the edge of the circle, where he caught himself on hands and knees. Sorry about the delay, Valerian said lightly. Wanted to make sure all the players were present for the finale. Kellen looked up, saw the pedestal, saw Poppy's face. What's happening? She's choosing, Valerian answered before Poppy could speak, between saving you and saving herself. It's very dramatic. You should feel honored to witness it. Don't listen to him, Kellen said, climbing to his feet despite the guards holding him back. Whatever he's offering, it's a lie. It's not a lie. Poppy's voice came out flat, dead. He's telling the truth. That's what makes it worse. She approached the pedestal, staring at the 2 objects that represented 2 impossible futures. Her hand hovered between them, trembling. The key meant death. Slow, agonizing, but at least noble, at least meaningful. The collar meant survival. But as what? Valerian's possession? A fey creature wearing her face, forgetting what it meant to be human? Poppy, don't, Kellen started, but Valerian cut him off with a gesture that sealed the young soldier's mouth shut mid-word. No interruptions during the choosing. It's tradition. Poppy's fingers moved toward the key. If she was going to die anyway, might as well make it count. Might as well save someone. A voice echoed from the doorway. Female, young, familiar. She's lying to herself. Poppy spun to find Alara standing there. Not the thing that had pretended to be Alara at her window, but the real princess. And beside her, the other 5. All of them awake, aware, looking at Poppy with eyes that held far too much knowledge. What? How are you here? Poppy demanded. We never left. Cassia, the youngest, stepped forward. She looked maybe 16 with dark hair and darker eyes. Not really. Part of us has been here the whole time, watching, waiting. The binding doesn't just pull our bodies, Alara explained, moving into the chamber with her sisters following. It splits us. Part mortal, part fey. We're dying in the mortal realm because half our souls are trapped here. Valerian's expression flickered. Annoyance, maybe, or frustration, before settling back into his usual mask. This is irregular. This is necessary, Alara shot back. You've been playing games with her, breaking her down so she'd choose the collar, but she deserves to know the whole truth before deciding. What truth? Poppy looked between the princesses and the Fey King, trying to understand what was happening. That you're not the first? Cassia said quietly. He's done this before. Made bargains with desperate girls, put them through trials designed to break them, offered them the same choice. Key or collar, death or binding. How many? Poppy's voice was barely a whisper. 17, Alara answered. We counted. 17 girls over the past 3 centuries, all cursed the same night they agreed to save someone else. All brought here. All faced the same trials. The chamber tilted. Poppy grabbed the pedestal for support, her mind refusing to process what she was hearing. The summer solstice, she breathed. The night I woke up cursed. The night you all got sick, that wasn't coincidence. No. Alara's eyes held sympathy and steel in equal measure. He cursed you, deliberately. Made you into something the mortal world would reject, so you'd be desperate enough to make a bargain when the time came. Poppy turned to Valerian, fury and horror warring in her chest. You did this to me? You destroyed my life, turned me into a monster, got me accused of murder, also I'd be broken enough to stay here? Valerian's expression didn't change, didn't deny it, just watched her with those emerald eyes, waiting. Why? The word ripped out of her throat. Why go through all this? If you wanted someone bound to your court, why not just take them? Because taking doesn't work. For the first time, Valerian's voice held something raw. The Fey realm feeds on choice, on willing surrender. I can trap mortals here, yes, but they wither, die, become useless. But someone who chooses to stay, who picks the collar knowing what it means, his smile was bitter. That's power. That's fuel. That keeps the realm alive for another century. And the other 17 girls chose the key. Every one of them chose noble death over surrender. Something flickered across his face. Regret? Loss? Before disappearing. I thought you'd be different. Thought your particular brand of brokenness would lead you toward survival instead of martyrdom. You thought wrong. Poppy reached for the key. Valerian's hand shot out faster than thought, gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. Don't, please. The please made her hesitate, made her look at him, really look, and see something she hadn't noticed before. Desperation. Behind all the power and beauty and cruel manipulation, he was desperate. The realm is dying, he said quietly, has been for centuries. Without someone choosing to stay, to feed it with willing mortal life, it'll collapse within a decade. Everything here, every fae, every creature, every impossible wonder will cease to exist. That's not my problem. It is, actually, because if this realm dies, the barriers between worlds weaken. All the things we've kept trapped here, all the nightmares and horrors that the mortal world forgot, they'll bleed through. Your world will burn. His grip tightened. I'm not the villain here, wolf girl. I'm trying to prevent apocalypse. And yes, I'm doing it through manipulation and cruelty, but the alternative is worse. Poppy looked at Alara. Is that true? The princess's face was torn. We don't know. Maybe. The Fae don't lie, but they don't tell complete truths either. He could be right. Or he could be making it worse by trying to fix it. Helpful, Poppy muttered. Her mind raced, trying to find the angle she was missing, the third option that didn't end in death or slavery. But Valerian had designed this perfectly. Had spent 3 months, no, 3 centuries, refining this trap until it was flawless. There has to be another way, she said again, but with less conviction. There isn't. Valerian released her wrist, stepped back. I've tried everything. This is the only solution that works. Someone with enough mortal vitality to sustain the realm, but Fae enough to survive the transition. That's why I cursed them first, the wolf transformation, the half change. It makes the binding possible. And if I refuse both, don't take the key, don't wear the collar, then you stay here in limbo, not alive, not dead, not free, not bound, conscious but fading. It's worse than either option, trust me. Poppy looked at the 6 princesses, at Kellen still held silent by Fae magic, at the 2 objects on the pedestal that represented her only choices. If I take the key and die, she said slowly, do the princesses go free? Yes, their binding breaks with your sacrifice. And if I take the collar, they stay bound. Their souls remain split. They continue dying slowly in the mortal realm, while their other halves dance here each night. Of course the collar option came with that cost. It wasn't enough to just surrender herself. She had to choose between her life and theirs. Make the math explicit. You're a bastard, Poppy said conversationally. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. Cassia stepped forward, her young face set in determination. Don't do it. Don't take either one. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Alara interrupted, voice heavy with knowledge she didn't want. I've been split between worlds for 3 months. I've seen how this works. The magic is absolute. She has to choose or everyone loses. Then she chooses life, Kellen said, his voice suddenly working again. Valerian must have released the binding. Poppy, take the collar. Stay alive. We'll figure out how to free the princesses some other way, but don't die for this. Spoken like someone who's never had to make an impossible choice, Valerian observed. Kellen ignored him, eyes locked on Poppy. Please, I didn't come back here just to watch you die. The weight of everyone's expectations crushed down on Poppy's shoulders. Choose. Decide. Pick which destruction you can live with or die with. Her hand moved toward the key, then toward the collar, then back again. I need time to think. No more time. Valerian's voice cut like a whip. The trial ends at sunset. You have maybe 5 minutes. Choose now or lose the option entirely and stay in limbo forever. 5 minutes to decide if she wanted to be a martyr or a prisoner. 5 minutes to weigh 6 lives against her own. 5 minutes to determine what kind of person she was at her core. The wolf inside her howled for survival. Didn't care about princesses or realms or consequences, just wanted to live, to keep existing, to fight another day. The human part remembered why she'd come here in the first place. Not for glory, not for redemption, but because someone needed to try. Poppy closed her eyes, took a breath that tasted like copper and honey and rot. Made her choice. Her hand closed around, "Wait!" A new voice, sharp and commanding, cut through the tension. Poppy's eyes snapped open to find Darius Wolfborn standing in the doorway. The Alpha King had somehow crossed into the Fey realm, looking utterly out of place in his mortal clothes and mortal scowl, radiating the kind of barely contained violence that made even the Fey guards step back. "You," Valyrian hissed. "You can't be here. The barriers are weakening, just like you said." Darius strode into the chamber, and Poppy could see the cost it took him. Sweat on his brow, tremor in his hands, the effort of existing in a realm that wasn't meant for mortals. "Which means I can force my way through if I'm motivated enough. And you taking my sisters? That's motivation." "Your Majesty," Alara started, but Darius cut her off with a gesture. "Later. First we deal with this." He turned to Valyrian. "You want someone to sustain your dying realm? Someone with enough power to keep it alive? Fine. Take me." The chamber went silent. "What?" Valyrian's composure finally cracked. "You can't— Oh, I'm the Alpha King. My bloodline is older than your realm, stronger than any mortal curse you could create. If you need someone to feed your magic, I'm a better choice than a half-cursed girl or 6 princesses." Darius's smile was all teeth. "So here's my offer. Let them all go. Poppy, my sisters, the boy, and I'll put on your collar, willingly, permanently." "No," Poppy said immediately. "No, you can't." "I can and I will." Darius didn't look at her, kept his focus on Valyrian. "You wanted a willing sacrifice. You've got one. Better than anything you could manipulate into choosing. Accept it." Valyrian stared at the Alpha King like he'd sprouted wings. "Why would you do this? You hate your sisters, killed your own father. Why sacrifice everything for them now?" "Because they're mine." The words came out flat, absolute. Mine to protect, mine to save. And I don't let what's mine get destroyed by Fey manipulation. Finally, Darius looked at Poppy, and his expression softened fractionally. "Besides, this girl has been through enough. She deserves better than dying for strangers or becoming your pet project." Tears burned behind Poppy's eyes. She blinked them away furiously. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Darius moved to the pedestal, reached for the collar. "This is what leaders do. We make the hard choices so others don't have to." His hand closed around the iron. And that's when everything went wrong. The moment Darius touched the collar, light exploded through the chamber. Not Fey light, but something older, wilder, wrong. The Alpha King screamed, a sound of pure agony, as the metal burned into his skin. "No," Valyrian breathed, horror clear on his face. "No, it's not supposed to." The collar rejected Darius. Violently. The Alpha King's body convulsed, smoke rising from where the iron touched his neck, his eyes rolling back as magic and bloodline warred for dominance. "Get it off him!" Poppy lunged forward, but Fey guards materialized to hold her back. "It's killing him!" "I can't!" Valyrian was trying to pull the collar away, but it had fused to Darius's skin, burning deeper. "His bloodline is too pure. It's fighting the binding. If I don't stop this, it'll—" Darius's scream cut off abruptly. His body went rigid, then collapsed. The collar clattered to the floor, smoking, and the Alpha King didn't move. "No, no, no!" Alara broke free from her sisters, dropped to her knees beside her brother's body. "Darius, wake up, please. You have to wake up." But he didn't. Didn't breathe, didn't respond. Poppy felt something inside her chest crack and splinter. He'd tried to save her, tried to take her place, and it had killed him. "This is your fault," she snarled at Valyrian, ripping free from the guards. You and your trials and your manipulations, you killed him. I didn't. I never meant. For the first time, the Fey King looked genuinely shaken. His bloodline was supposed to be compatible. I don't understand what went wrong. What went wrong is you played games with lives that weren't yours to gamble. Poppy's voice cracked. You cursed me, orchestrated everything, and now he's dead because you couldn't just let us go. The realm shuddered, literally. The floor buckled, the walls cracked, the impossible stars overhead began to fall. The realm, one of the Fey guards whispered. It's collapsing. Impossible, Valerian said, but his eyes were wide. We have years left. His death broke something, Cassia said, her voice distant. I can feel it. The barriers between worlds. They're failing, faster than before. Poppy looked at Darius's body, at the princesses trying to revive him, at Kellen staring in horror, at Valerian's mask finally shattering into panic. And she understood. This was the real trial. Not the pedestal. Not the choice between key and collar. This, watching someone die for her, watching everything fall apart, standing in the wreckage of too many bad choices. This was what would define who she became. Martyr or survivor. Human or monster. Poppy Ashvale or Red Eyes. She looked down at her clawed hands, at the silver scar across her palm, at the dress that had stopped feeling like a costume. Then she looked at the pedestal, where both objects still waited. The key that meant death. The collar that meant surrender. And suddenly, with crystal clarity, she knew what she had to do. There's a third option, she said quietly. Everyone stopped, looked at her. There is no third option, Valerian said. I told you, You told me a lot of things. Most of them designed to limit my thinking, make me believe I only had two choices. Poppy walked to the pedestal, but didn't reach for either object. Instead, she pulled the hunting knife from her dress and pressed it against the silver scar on her palm. But I'm done accepting your rules, done playing by Fey logic. You want someone to sustain the realm? Someone with mortal vitality and Fey compatibility? Fine. She drew the blade across her palm, deeper this time. Blood welled up, hot and red and alive. I'll give you what you need, but on my terms. What are you? Valerian started. Poppy didn't let him finish. She grabbed the collar with her bleeding hand, let her blood flow over the cursed iron. Then she grabbed the key with her other hand, pressed both objects together. The realm screamed. Magic erupted from the collision, gold and black, light and shadow, mortal and Fey. It poured into Poppy's body through the wounds on her hands, through the scar that bound her to this place, through every cell that the curse had touched, pain like nothing she'd ever imagined. Her body was being rewritten, unmade and remade, the wolf curse burning away, the Fey magic taking root, the mortal vitality feeding both. But she wasn't surrendering, wasn't choosing death or binding. She was choosing synthesis. You wanted someone to bridge worlds? Poppy gasped through the agony. Congratulations, you're getting exactly that. The magic intensified, became blinding. Poppy felt her bones reshaping, her blood transmuting, her very essence transforming into something that had never existed before. Not human, not wolf, not Fey. All three and none of them. The last thing she heard before consciousness fled was Valerian's voice, shocked and awed and terrified. What have you done? Then everything went dark, and Poppy fell into a transformation that would either save them all or destroy everything, and she wouldn't know which until consciousness returned in fragments. Pain first, bone-deep, marrow-burning agony that made breathing feel like swallowing glass. Then sound, voices shouting, the realm groaning like a wounded animal, something massive cracking apart. Finally sight, blurred and doubled, the world bleeding colors that had no names. Poppy tried to move and discovered her body didn't respond the way it used to. Everything felt different, lighter, denser, wrong and right simultaneously. She forced her eyes to focus, pushed herself up on hands that looked familiar but felt alien. The chamber had transformed into a war zone. Cracks spiderwebbed across every surface, leaking light that wasn't light. Pure magic, raw and uncontained, bleeding from the wound she'd carved into reality. The Fey guards were on their knees, hands pressed to their ears, screaming silently. The princesses huddled together near Darius's body, which still wasn't moving, and Kellen stood over them with his sword drawn like he could fight off the collapse of an entire realm through sheer determination. And Valyrian, the Fey King, stood at the center of the chaos, staring at Poppy with an expression she couldn't parse. Horror? Yes, but also wonder, recognition, like he was seeing something he'd waited centuries to witness. "What did you do?" he asked again, voice barely audible over the realm's death throes. Poppy looked down at herself and understood his shock. The green dress hung in tatters, shredded by the transformation. Underneath, her body had changed. The wolf curse was gone. Her legs were human again, hands fully formed, no claws pushing through skin. But she wasn't entirely human either. Her skin held a faint luminescence, like moonlight caught under glass. Her eyes, she could feel them burning, could see the reflected glow, were no longer red but silver white, fey bright. And the magic, God, the magic coursing through her veins felt like lightning and honey and everything in between. "I merged them," Poppy said, and her voice resonated wrong, carrying harmonics that shouldn't exist. "The collar and the key, mortality and immortality. Your realm's hunger and my refusal to surrender. I forced them to coexist." "That's impossible. The magics are incompatible." "They were, until I made myself the bridge." Poppy stood, and the movement was effortless despite the pain. Power thrummed under her skin, demanding release. "You wanted someone to sustain this place? Fine, but I'm not your prisoner. I'm not your sacrifice. I'm something new." The realm shuddered again, harder. A section of wall crumbled, revealing the impossible sky beyond. Except the sky was wrong now, bleeding from twilight into something darker. Corruption spreading like infection. "You're killing it," Valyrian said, and for the first time he sounded genuinely afraid. "The realm can't handle what you've become. It's too much power, too much contradiction. You're tearing it apart from the inside." Poppy felt it then. The realm trying to digest her, to break her down into something manageable. But she was too much mortal to be consumed by fey magic, too much fey to be rejected by the realm's defenses. The stalemate was destroying everything. "Then fix it," she snapped. "You're the king here. Do something." "I can't. This is beyond me." Valyrian moved closer, careful, like approaching a wild animal. "You broke the rules, rewrote the fundamental structure of how this realm operates. Only you can stabilize it now." "How?" "I don't know." The admission hung between them, stark and terrifying. The Fey King, ancient, powerful, manipulative, had no idea how to fix what Poppy had done. Another tremor, violent enough to knock them both off balance. Kellen shouted something Poppy couldn't hear over the groaning magic. The princesses were trying to drag Darius's body toward the door, but the exit kept shifting, relocating as the room's geometry collapsed. "We need to get out of here," Alara screamed. "Now!" "The gateway's failing," Cassia added, her young face streaked with tears. "If it closes completely, we're trapped." Poppy's mind raced. The realm was dying because of her transformation. The gateway was collapsing. Darius was dead or dying, and she had power surging through her veins with no idea how to control it. Think. There had to be a solution, had to be something she could... Her eyes landed on Darius's body, and something clicked. "He's not dead," she said suddenly. "What?" Valyrian followed her gaze. The caller rejected him because his bloodline was too pure, too powerful. But it didn't kill him, it just shut him down. Self-preservation. Poppy moved toward the Alpha King's prone form, the princesses parting to let her through. His body went into hibernation to protect itself from the conflicting magic. "That doesn't help us," Kellen said desperately. "Even if he's alive, he's not waking up, and this place is falling apart. It helps because I can fix it." Poppy knelt beside Darius, pressed her glowing hands against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, faint, slow, but there. "I'm the bridge now, mortal and fey. I can filter the caller's magic through myself, make it compatible with his bloodline." "You have no idea if that will work," Valyrian warned. "Do you have a better idea?" Silence. "Then shut up and let me try." Poppy closed her eyes, reached for the magic inside her, the impossible blend of mortal vitality and fey power, and channeled it into Darius, not forcing, but offering, creating a pathway his body could accept. The resistance was immediate and brutal. The Alpha King's bloodline fought her intrusion, recognized her as threat and anomaly. But Poppy pushed harder, using the mortal part of herself to gentle the invasion, the Fey part to speak the language his unconscious mind understood. "Come on," she muttered through gritted teeth. "You didn't cross realms and try to sacrifice yourself just to die on my watch. Wake up, you stubborn bastard." Magic flowed from her hands into his chest, wrapping around his heart, forcing it to beat stronger, faster. She could feel his systems responding, fighting their way back from shutdown. "It's working," Alara breathed. "His color's coming back." Darius's eyes snapped open. He gasped, body arching off the floor, and Poppy barely pulled her hands back in time to avoid being thrown. The Alpha King rolled to his hands and knees, coughing, shaking, alive. "What? Where?" His eyes found Poppy, widened. "You're glowing." "Long story. Can you move?" "I think so." Darius pushed himself upright, swaying. "What happened to the collar? Why am I not—" Your bloodline rejected it. You nearly died. I brought you back." Poppy turned to Valerian. "Now tell me how to stabilize this realm before we all die for real." The Fey King was staring at her with an expression that bordered on reverence. "You saved him. Using the power that's destroying my realm, you saved him. Is that relevant right now?" "It might be." Valerian's mind was clearly racing, fitting pieces together. The realm feeds on choices, on transformations. You transformed yourself, yes, but incompletely. You're caught between states, and that's what's causing the instability. "So I need to finish the transformation?" "No. You need to choose what you're transforming into." He gestured at the crumbling chamber. "Right now, you're everything and nothing. Mortal Fey Wolf, all at once. The realm can't process that, but if you decide what you are, claim one identity over the others, the magic will settle." Poppy's stomach dropped. "You're saying I have to give up part of what I am?" "I'm saying you have to integrate it, choose which aspect defines you, and let the others become background instead of equal voice." Valerian moved closer, and his expression was almost gentle. "That's what transformation means, Wolf Girl. Not addition, evolution. You can't be three things simultaneously. You have to be one new thing that incorporates all three." Another tremor. The ceiling began to crack, raining dust and fragments of impossible stone. "We're out of time," Darius said, grabbing Alara's arm. "Whatever you're going to do it fast." Poppy looked at her glowing hands, felt the magic warring inside her. Mortal vitality that wanted to live, grow, age, die. Fey power that wanted to endure, remain, persist eternally. Wolf instinct that wanted to hunt, claim, dominate territory. Three voices, three desires, three incompatible truths. She had to choose which one led, which one defined the core of who she'd become. The mortal part whispered, "Choose me. Stay human at your base. Let the other aspects serve that humanity." The Fey part offered, "Choose me. Embrace immortality, power beyond mortal limits, be something greater." The wolf part growled, "Choose me. Be the predator you were always meant to become. No more fear. No more weakness." "I don't want to lose any of them," Poppy said desperately. "You won't lose them. You'll synthesize them." Valerian's hand found her shoulder, surprisingly gentle. "But one has to be primary. One has to be the foundation everything else builds on. So ask yourself, when everything else is stripped away, what matters most? What truth do you hold above all others?" Poppy closed her eyes, reached deep into the chaos of her transformation, searching for the core of who she was, and found it. Not human, not Fey, not wolf, but the thing that connected all three. Choice. She'd chosen to make the bargain, chosen to face the trials, chosen to merge the collar and key instead of accepting Valerian's limited options. Every step of this journey had been about refusing to accept someone else's definition of what she could be. That was her foundation. That was her truth. Not what she was, but what she chose to become. Poppy opened her eyes, and they blazed silver white with absolute clarity. "I choose agency," she said. "I choose to be the thing that decides for itself what it becomes. Mortal enough to grow and change, Fey enough to endure and persist, wolf enough to claim territory and fight for it. but defined by none of them, defined only by the fact that I choose. The magic inside her responded like a bell being struck. Everything clicked into place. The warring aspects of her transformation aligned, not by one dominating the others, but by all three serving a single purpose. She felt her body stabilize, the painful contradictions resolving into something coherent, new, unprecedented, and the realm responded. The tremors stopped, the cracks sealed, the bleeding magic withdrew, settling back into the structures that contained it. Reality reasserted itself with an almost audible snap. Poppy stood in the center of the chamber, glowing like captured starlight, and felt the realm recognize her. Not as invader or prisoner or sustenance, but as something that belonged because it had claimed the right to belong. Impossible, Valerian breathed. You did it. You actually stabilized. The realm isn't dying anymore, Cassia said, wonder in her voice. I can feel it. The barriers are holding. For now, Poppy said. Her voice still carried those impossible harmonics, but controlled now. Deliberate. But we have bigger problems. The princesses are still bound to this place. Darius is still vulnerable to whatever magic hit him, and she looked at her glowing hands. I have no idea what I am anymore. You're the bridge, Valerian said simply. Exactly what you said. The thing that connects mortal and fae, that makes coexistence possible. He paused, then added quietly, the thing I've been trying to create for 3 centuries. By cursing and manipulating innocent girls. Yes, and I'm not going to apologize for that, because the alternative was letting both realms die. His expression hardened. But you're right that my methods were flawed. You proved there was another way, a better way. Touching, truly. Darius's voice cut through the moment, sharp with barely contained fury. But I don't care about your realms or your methods. I care about my sisters. You said they're bound here. Fix it. Valerian turned to face the Alpha King, and something dangerous flickered between them. 2 predators, 2 rulers, neither willing to submit. I can't fix it, Valerian said. Not alone. The binding is tied to the realm's structure. Break it completely, and the realm dies. Keep it, and they continue wasting away in the mortal world. Then we find a middle ground, Poppy interjected before Darius could attack. A way to maintain the binding without killing them. There isn't, Valerian started. There is now. Poppy moved to stand between the 2 men, forcing them to acknowledge her. I'm the bridge, remember? I can channel the binding through myself instead of them. Let them go, and I'll sustain the connection. That would require you to stay here. Permanently. Not permanently, partially. Poppy's mind was working through the implications, the possibilities her transformation had opened. I can exist in both realms now. Mortal enough to return home, fae enough to maintain the binding. I split my time, serve as the anchor this place needs without surrendering my entire existence to it. Valerian studied her, and she could see him calculating, measuring, testing the idea for flaws. It might work, he admitted finally, but it would tie you to me, to this court. You'd have responsibilities here, obligations you couldn't ignore. Better than dying, better than the princesses dying. Poppy met his gaze without flinching. And I get something out of it too. Power, knowledge, purpose, things the mortal world couldn't give me. You're negotiating, Valerian said, and something like respect entered his tone. After everything, you're still trying to get the best possible deal. Damn right I am. I'm done being a victim. Poppy turned to Darius. Your Majesty, if I do this, if I agree to be the anchor that keeps the princesses alive and the realms balanced, I want your word that my pardon stands, that I can return to the mortal world without fear of execution or imprisonment. Darius's jaw tightened. You're asking me to let a fae-touched creature walk free in my kingdom. I'm asking you to honor the bargain you made, the one where I solve your problem and earn my freedom. Poppy's voice hardened. I've done more than solve it. I've saved your sisters' lives and prevented an apocalypse. So yes, I'm asking for what I'm owed. For a long moment, the Alpha King stared at her with those winter storm eyes. Then, grudgingly, he nodded. Fine. Your pardon stands. You're free to go wherever you please in the mortal realm. He paused,
But if you ever threaten my kingdom or my people, pardon or not, I will hunt you down." "Fair enough." "Then we have an agreement," Valerian said, and Poppy could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "You'll serve as the bridge between realms, sustaining the binding that keeps my court alive. The princesses go free. Everyone gets what they need."
"Not quite everyone," Alara said suddenly. All eyes turned to the eldest princess. "What about the other girls? The 17 who came before Poppy, who chose death over binding. What happens to them?" Silence crashed through the chamber. Poppy had almost forgotten. 17 other cursed girls, 17 other desperate bargains, 17 deaths that Valerian had orchestrated over centuries.
"They're gone," the Fey King said flatly. "Chose the key, died as heroes, and moved on to whatever afterlife mortals believe in. There's nothing to be done about them now, isn't there?" Poppy felt something crystallize in her mind. "You said the realm feeds on choices, on transformations. Those girls chose death. That was their transformation, but I chose something different. I chose to rewrite the rules." She stepped closer to Valerian. "What if I could reach back through the binding, through the choices they made, and offer them the same option I took? A third path they didn't know existed. That's insane. They're dead. You can't resurrect the dead, not even with Fey magic." "But they're not fully dead, are they?" Poppy pressed. "Part of them is still here, caught in the moment of their choice. I can feel them, echoes in the realm's structure, fragments of the transformation they started, but never completed." Valerian's expression shifted from dismissal to reluctant consideration. "Even if that's true, and I'm not conceding that it is, reaching back through time like that would require power beyond anything you currently have. You'd burn yourself out trying." "Not if you helped me." The Fey King laughed, sharp and bitter. "Why would I help you undo my own work?" "Because you said you're not the villain. Because you claimed you were trying to prevent apocalypse, not create it." Poppy moved closer, closing the distance until they were nearly touching. "Because 17 girls died thinking they had no choice. And you know what that's like. You've been trapped by your own role here for centuries. So prove you're more than just a predator playing with prey. Help me give them what you wish someone had given you." Valerian stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her glowing hand in his cold one. "You're either the bravest thing I've ever met, or the stupidest," he said. "Why not both?" His laugh was genuine this time. "Why not indeed?" He squeezed her hand once. "All right, Bridge Girl, let's see if we can rewrite history." The magic that erupted from their joined hands was cataclysmic. Poppy felt Valerian's power join with hers, felt the combined force reaching back through time, through choices, through deaths that had seemed final. The realm shuddered around them, not in collapse but in reconfiguration, reality bending to accommodate the impossible. And one by one, the echoes responded. 17 voices, 17 fragments of girls who died rather than surrender. Poppy could feel them stirring, waking from deaths that had frozen them in amber, offered the same choice she'd taken. "Take my hand," she called to them across time and magic. "You don't have to die. You don't have to surrender. There's a third path. I'll show you." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the first girl reached back. Light exploded through the chamber as the echo solidified, transformed from fragment to form. A girl, maybe 20 years old, materialized in the center of the room, gasping like she'd been drowning, eyes wide with shock and confusion. What?" she stammered. "You're alive," Poppy said simply. "Welcome back." Another echo reached back, then another, then 3 at once. The chamber filled with light and sound and the impossible reality of resurrection, girls appearing one after another, pulled from deaths they'd accepted back into the realm of choice. Valerian's hand tightened on Poppy's, and she could feel the strain on him. This much magic, this much rewriting of fundamental law, was costing him dearly. "How many?" he gasped. 13 so far, Poppy counted. 4 more. Come on, you can do this." The 14th girl appeared, then the 15th. The strain was becoming unbearable, Poppy's body screaming under the weight of channeling this much power. 16th girl. Almost there. But the 17th wouldn't come. Poppy reached for her, felt the echo respond, felt the girl trying to reach back, and hit a wall. She stuck, Poppy said desperately. I can feel her, but something's holding her back, and it's her choice, Valerian said, voice strained. She died too completely, accepted it too fully. You can offer the path, but she has to choose to take it, and she... The 17th echo pulled away. Poppy felt the rejection like a physical blow. The girl had heard the offer, understood it, and chosen to stay dead, chosen to let her sacrifice stand. No, Poppy whispered. Come back. Please. Let her go, Valerian said gently. Some choices can't be unmade. She earned her rest. Honor it. It hurt, but he was right. Poppy released the connection, let the 17th echo slip back into whatever peace she'd found. 16 girls. Out of 17, she'd saved 16. It would have to be enough. The magic released in a rush that left both Poppy and Valerian staggering. The chamber went silent except for the confused murmurs of the resurrected girls, all of them trying to understand what had happened. You did it, Kellen said, awe in his voice. You actually brought them back. Poppy looked at the 16 girls, at their faces showing every emotion from terror to wonder, and felt something settle in her chest. Not completion, but purpose. This was why she'd survived, why she'd transformed, not just to save herself, but to give others the same chance. They'll need help, she said to Valerian, adjusting, understanding what they are now. They'll have it. The Fey King looked at the girls with an expression Poppy couldn't quite read. I owe them that much. Darius cleared his throat, drawing attention back to more immediate concerns. This has been touching and magical and generally impressive, but my sisters are still bound to this realm, and I'd very much like that fixed before we have any more dramatic resurrections. Right, the princesses. Poppy turned to face the 6 royal sisters, who'd watched the entire proceedings with varying degrees of shock. This is going to feel strange, she warned them. I'm going to transfer the binding from you to me. It might hurt. Can't hurt worse than dying slowly, Cassia said with grim humor beyond her years. Poppy approached each princess in turn, pressing her glowing hands to their foreheads. She could feel the binding threads, taste the magic that had been draining them, and carefully, methodically, she unwove them. Transferred each thread from the princess to herself, absorbing the burden. By the time she reached the 6th princess, Poppy's body was trembling with the effort. 6 bindings, 6 connections to the Fey realm, all channeled through her instead of spread across multiple hosts. It was crushing weight, demanding constant attention. But it worked. The last thread transferred and Cassia gasped, color flooding back into her cheeks. I can feel it, she breathed. The splitting, it's gone. I'm whole again. The other princesses were having similar reactions, touching their faces, their arms, like confirming they were real and complete. We're free, Elara whispered. After 3 months, we're actually free. You're free, Poppy confirmed, though her voice was strained. The binding runs through me now. You can go home. Darius moved to his sisters, gathering them close in a rare display of affection. We're leaving, now, before anything else goes catastrophically wrong. The gateway is stable, Valerian said, gesturing toward the door that had reappeared, solid and permanent. You can all return to the mortal realm. The binding is broken. My realm is sustained. Everyone wins. Except her, Kellen said, pointing at Poppy. She's carrying the weight of 6 bindings plus whatever transformation she went through. That can't be sustainable. It's not, Poppy admitted. Not long term, but I can manage it in shifts. Spend part of my time here, letting the Fey magic support the bindings. Part in the mortal realm, letting my humanity ground me. Back and forth. Balance. That's no life, Kellen protested. It's the life I chose. Poppy met his eyes, saw the concern there, and felt something warm in her chest. I'm not a prisoner, Kellen. I'm a bridge. And bridges connect things. That's the whole point. He looked like he wanted to argue more, but Darius cut him off. We're leaving, Poppy included. She's earned a chance to return home, even if she has to come back here periodically. The Alpha King's tone brooked no argument. Valerian, I assume we have your word that she can travel freely between realms? You have it. The Fey King's expression was unreadable. Though I suspect she'll find the mortal realm less welcoming than she hopes. People fear what they don't understand, and she, he gestured at Poppy's glowing form, is very much not understood.
I'll handle it, Poppy said with more confidence than she felt. Valerian studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. Very well. But before you go, he pulled something from thin air, a golden tree pendant on a delicate chain. Take this. It's linked to the realm. If you ever need to return quickly, or if the bindings become too heavy to manage alone, it will bring you back. Poppy took the pendant, felt it warm against her palm. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You have no idea what you've committed yourself to. But his smile held something almost like fondness, though I suspect you'll figure it out. You're remarkably good at impossible things. The 16 resurrected girls had gathered near the door, clearly eager to leave but unsure if they were allowed. Valerian addressed them directly. You're free to go. Back to the mortal realm, back to whatever lives you had before my manipulation destroyed them. Or, he paused. Or you can stay here. Learn what you've become. Some of you may find you prefer the Fey realm to the world that rejected you. Several of the girls exchanged glances, clearly torn. You don't have to decide now, Poppy added. The gateway will remain open. You can cross back and forth, test both options, figure out what feels right. That seemed to ease their tension. A few nodded, moving toward the door with clear intent to leave. Others hung back, uncertain. Shall we? Darius gestured toward the exit, his sisters already moving in that direction. Kellen offered Poppy his arm. Ready to face the mortal world again? Poppy looked around the chamber one last time, at Valerian, standing alone among his court, at the resurrected girls finding their footing, at the realm that had tried to destroy her and instead transformed her into something unprecedented. As ready as I'll ever be, she said, taking Kellen's arm. They walked toward the door together. Poppy, Kellen, Darius, the 6 princesses, and most of the 16 resurrected girls. Through the gateway, through the barrier between worlds, through the impossible space that separated mortal from fey. The transition was jarring, like being turned inside out and right side in simultaneously. For a moment, Poppy existed in both realms at once, feeling the pull of the bindings trying to keep her in the fey court, feeling her mortality anchoring her to the world she'd been born in. Then they were through, stumbling into the princess's chamber in the north tower of Darius's castle. The guards stationed outside jerked to attention, hands flying to weapons when they saw the group materialize from nothing, but Darius raised a hand, stopping them. Stand down. They're with me. The gray-haired guard from before stepped forward, eyes wide. Your Majesty, the princesses, they're cured. Yes. Darius's voice was clipped, brooking no questions. Spread the word. My sisters are well. The threat is ended. Anyone who asks questions gets thrown in the dungeons. The guard saluted and hurried off, likely grateful to have simple orders after witnessing the impossible. Poppy swayed, the weight of the bindings hitting her full force now that she was in the mortal realm. Here, without the fey magic to support them, the connections felt like anchors trying to drag her back. You need to rest, Ilara said, catching Poppy's arm. You look like you're about to collapse. I'm fine, Poppy lied. You're glowing and swaying and clearly not fine. The princess guided her toward one of the beds. Sit, before you fall. Poppy didn't have the energy to argue. She sat, feeling her transformed body trying to adjust to the mortal realm's laws of physics and magic. Everything here felt heavier, slower, more resistant. This was going to take some getting used to. Darius dismissed the guards, waited until they were alone with just the core group, his sisters, Poppy, Kellen, and a handful of the resurrected girls who'd chosen to follow them through. Now, the Alpha King said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. We need to discuss what happens next, because I have a castle full of people who are going to want explanations for why 6 dying princesses are suddenly healthy, why a condemned criminal is walking free, and why there's a glowing woman in my tower who smells like fey magic and transformation. Tell them the truth, Poppy said, too tired to care about politics. Tell them I solved your problem and earned my pardon. The details are irrelevant. The details matter when people are afraid. Then help them not be afraid. Poppy met his eyes, refusing to back down despite the exhaustion pulling at her. You're the Alpha King. You set the tone. If you treat me like a threat, they will too. If you treat me like someone who saved your family, maybe they'll follow that lead instead. Darius studied her for a long moment. Then, surprising everyone, he laughed, sharp and genuine. You have steel in you, bridge girl. I'll give you that. He turned to his sisters.
Go rest. All of you. Recover. We'll handle the political fallout tomorrow. The princesses filed out, casting grateful glances at Poppy as they went. The resurrected girls followed, though several looked lost, unsure where they belonged in this world they'd been torn from. Only Kellen remained, standing guard like he had any chance of protecting Poppy from the challenges ahead. You should go too, Poppy told him. Get some sleep. I'm safe here. Are you? Kellen's young face was set in stubborn lines. Because you're carrying impossible magic bound to a fey realm and glowing like you swallowed a star. That doesn't feel safe. It's safer than where I've been.
He wanted to argue. She could see it in his eyes, but finally he nodded. I'll be right outside. You need anything? Call. After he left, it was just Poppy and Darius in the chamber. The Alpha King moved to the window, staring out at his kingdom with an expression she couldn't read. Thank you, he said finally, for saving them, for not taking the easy death when I tried to sacrifice myself. You're welcome. I'm also furious with you. That was unexpected. Why? Darius turned to face her, and his eyes were cold. Because you're a threat I can't control. A bridge between realms means you owe loyalty to both, which means you can't fully be trusted by either. You have power that could destabilize my kingdom, and I have no way to stop you if you decide to use it against me. Poppy's exhaustion evaporated, replaced by something sharper. Is that a threat? It's a reality. I honor my bargains so you have your pardon, but don't mistake that for friendship. Don't mistake it for trust. He moved closer, and she could feel the predator in him, barely leashed. Step out of line, threaten my people, and pardon or not, I will end you. Good to know where we stand, isn't it? He turned back to the window. Now get some rest. Tomorrow you face the real trial, convincing a kingdom that you're not the monster they think you are. He left without another word, and Poppy was finally alone. She lay back on the bed, the same bed where Princess Alar had been dying just days ago, and stared at the ceiling. Her body still glowed faintly, the fey magic refusing to fully dim. The bindings pulled at her consciousness, demanding attention she didn't have the strength to give. Tomorrow she'd face the kingdom, face their fear and judgment and hatred. Try to build a life in a world that had already rejected her once. But tonight, just for tonight, she was alive. Free. Transformed into something unprecedented. And somewhere in the fey realm, Valyrian was probably laughing at the chaos she'd unleashed. Poppy closed her eyes, felt the pendant against her chest, and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake or the best choice of her life. The answer, she suspected, was going to be, morning came too soon and not soon enough. Poppy woke to sunlight streaming through the tower window, the kind of clean mortal light that had no magic woven through it. For a moment she forgot where she was, forgot what she'd become, and reached for the simple comfort of being nobody again. Then she saw her hands still glowing faintly in the dawn light, and reality crashed back. A knock at the door pulled her from spiraling thoughts. "Come in," she called, sitting up and trying to smooth down hair that crackled with residual magic. Kellen entered carrying a tray of food and looking like he hadn't slept. "Thought you might be hungry. It's been almost 2 days since you ate anything mortal." 2 days. Had it really only been 2 days since she'd walked through that portal? It felt like years. Poppy took the tray gratefully, realized she was starving, and tore into bread and cheese with an appetite that surprised them both. The food tasted different now. She could sense the life that had gone into making it, the hands that had kneaded the dough, the age of the cheese. Her senses had expanded in ways she was still discovering. "The castle's in chaos," Kellen said, settling into a chair across from her. "Word spread about the princesses being cured. People are calling it a miracle. The Alpha King hasn't corrected them." "Smart. Miracles are easier to accept than the truth. He's also put out word that you're under his personal protection. Anyone who threatens you answers to him directly." Kellen's expression was complicated. "I don't think he trusts you, but he's honoring the bargain." "That's more than I expected." Poppy finished the bread, moved on to dried fruit that tasted like sunshine condensed. "What about the resurrected girls? The ones who came through with us?" "Scattered. Some went back to their families, the ones who still have families. Others are staying in the castle trying to figure out what comes next." He hesitated. "One of them asked to see you, the first girl who came back. Her name's Mara." "Send her in." Kellen left and returned moments later with a young woman who looked maybe 20, with copper hair and eyes that had seen too much. She moved with the same cautious grace Poppy recognized in herself, someone learning to inhabit a body that didn't quite fit anymore. "You saved me," Mara said without preamble. "Pulled me back from a death I'd accepted. I'm not sure if I should thank you or curse you." Poppy understood that feeling intimately. "You can do both. I won't be offended." A ghost of a smile touched Mara's lips. "Fair enough." She sat uninvited, studying Poppy with unsettling intensity. "What are you planning to do? Now that you're free but also bound, mortal but also fey, here but also there?" "I have no idea," Poppy admitted. "Navigate it day by day, I guess. Try not to get killed or lose myself in the process. That's not a plan. That's survival. Sometimes survival is the plan." Mara was quiet for a moment, then leaned forward. "I've been thinking about what you did, offering us that third choice. And I realized something. You didn't just save us from death. You saved us from the binary, from thinking we only had two options." "I'm not following." "All my life I was told I had to be one thing or another, obedient or rebellious, valuable or disposable, alive or dead. And when Valerian cursed me, when he put me through those trials, the choice seemed clear: die a hero or live as a prisoner." Mara's eyes blazed with conviction. "But you showed there's always a third path. It's just harder to see because we're trained not to look for it." Poppy felt something shift in her chest. She'd been so focused on her own transformation, her own choices, she hadn't considered what it meant for the others. "So what's your third path?" she asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find it." Mara stood, offered her hand. "And if you ever need help, if the weight of those bindings gets too heavy, or if the mortal world gets too hostile, you've got 16 girls who owe you everything. We won't forget that." Poppy took her hand, felt the warmth of human contact. "Thank you." After Mara left, Poppy sat in silence, trying to process the conversation. She'd given those girls something she hadn't fully understood herself: permission to be complex, to exist outside the categories others forced on them. Maybe that was worth the cost. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of preparations. Servants brought clothes, real clothes, not fey glamour, that actually fit her transformed body. Someone had clearly taken careful measurements while she slept, which was either thoughtful or creepy, depending on how she looked at it. By midday, word came that the Alpha King required her presence in the throne room. Time to face the kingdom. Cheats. The throne room was packed with courtiers, advisors, nobles, and guards. Everyone who mattered in Darius's court, all gathered to witness whatever came next. Poppy walked through doors that had almost been her execution just days ago, and the crowd parted like she was diseased. Fear. She could smell it on them, taste it in the air. They didn't understand what she was, and that terrified them more than any monster they could name. Darius sat on his throne looking every inch the Predator King, with his 6 sisters arrayed to his right, healthy and whole and radiating relief. To his left stood his closest advisors, all watching Poppy with varying degrees of suspicion. "Poppy Ashvale," Darius's voice carried through the hall, formal and final. "Also known as Red Eyes, you stand before this court a free woman, your crimes pardoned in exchange for services rendered to the crown. Is this your understanding?" "It is, your majesty." "Then let it be known." He rose from his throne, descended the dais steps with measured grace. "That you are under my personal protection. Any who threaten you threaten me directly. Any who harm you will answer to me. Is that clear?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone toward the back called out, "She's a monster, cursed by dark magic." Darius's eyes found the speaker with lethal precision. "She saved my sisters when every physician and priest failed. She walked into a fey realm and returned alive. She is exactly the kind of monster I want on my side." His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Anyone who disagrees is welcome to challenge me for the throne. Otherwise, shut up and accept reality." Silence crashed through the hall. Poppy felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Darius might not trust her, might see her as a threat, but he was keeping his word publicly and absolutely. That counted for something. "However," the Alpha King continued, turning back to Poppy, "your freedom comes with conditions. You will report to me monthly on the state of the bindings you carry. You will not use fey magic within my borders without explicit permission, and you will never, under any circumstances, attempt to open permanent gateways between realms. Agreed? The conditions were reasonable, more than reasonable given what she could potentially do. Agreed, Poppy said. Then this matter is settled. Darius returned to his throne. You're free to go wherever you please, though I'd suggest staying close for a few days. Let the kingdom adjust to your existence before wandering too far. It was a dismissal and a warning wrapped together. Poppy bowed, not deep, not submissive, but acknowledgement of his authority, and turned to leave. Wait! Alara's voice stopped her. The eldest princess stepped forward, moving with the strength of someone no longer dying. Before you go, I wanted to say something publicly. Poppy turned back, uncertain. Alara addressed the crowd. This woman sacrificed everything to save me and my sisters. She had no reason to help us. We were strangers, and the world had given her nothing but cruelty. But she did it anyway. She walked into darkness so we could live. The princess's voice grew stronger. I don't care what she looks like. I don't care what magic runs through her veins. She's a hero, and anyone who says otherwise can answer to me. The other 5 princesses stepped forward in solidarity, forming a line of royal support that made their position unmistakable. The crowd's mood shifted, not to acceptance, that would take time, but to grudging acknowledgement. If the princesses themselves declared Poppy worthy, who were they to argue? Poppy felt tears threatening and fought them back. She wouldn't cry in front of these people, wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Thank you, she managed, voice rough. All of you, for giving me a chance to prove I'm more than what I appear to be. She left before anyone could respond, before the fragile moment could shatter, and found Kellen waiting in the corridor outside. That went better than expected, he said. The bar was pretty low. He laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. Fair point. What now? Poppy considered. She had freedom, protection, and an impossible burden of bindings that would require her to split her existence between worlds. The smart move would be to rest, recover, figure out the logistics of her new life. But she'd never been particularly smart about these things. Now I go back, she said. Kellen's smile faded. Back to the Fey realm? Already? The bindings are pulling at me. I can feel them straining, trying to drag me back to stabilize the connections. If I wait too long, they might snap violently. Poppy touched the golden tree pendant at her throat. Better to go willingly than be yanked back against my will. How long will you be gone? I don't know. Days, maybe. However long it takes to reinforce the bindings and make sure Valerian's realm is stable. Kellen's jaw tightened. I don't like this. You going back there alone, dealing with a Fey king who manipulated you. He can't manipulate me anymore. I'm not desperate, not powerless. I go back as an equal, not a victim. Poppy touched his arm, felt him flinch at the residual magic in her skin. I'll be fine. And when I come back, maybe we can figure out what normal looks like for someone like me. There's no normal for someone like you. Then we'll invent one. She left him standing in the corridor, his worry following her like a shadow, and made her way back to the princess's tower. The chamber where this had all started felt different now, lighter, cleaner, free of the sickness that had permeated it for months. Poppy stood in the center of the carved circle on the floor and pulled out the golden tree pendant. The moment her fingers closed around it, she felt the pull intensify, the gateway beginning to form. Dramatic exit without saying goodbye. How very Fey of you. She turned to find Darius standing in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I didn't think you'd care, Poppy said honestly. I don't. Not about you specifically. He moved into the room, circling the forming gateway with predator wariness. But I do care about maintaining the balance you created. If you die in the Fey realm, if those bindings snap, my sisters start dying again. So yes, I care about that. Touching. Isn't it? He stopped a few feet away, and for the first time she saw something other than cold calculation in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe? Or respect. You're not what I expected when they dragged you into my throne room in chains. What did you expect? A monster begging for mercy. Someone I could use and discard. His smile was bitter. Instead, I got someone who rewrote reality rather than accept limited options. That's either impressive or terrifying. Why not both? He laughed, sharp and genuine. You sound like Valerian. That worries me. It should. Poppy felt the gateway stabilizing behind her, the pull becoming irresistible. I need to go. The bindings. I know. Go. Stabilize your impossible magic. Come back alive. Darius's expression hardened. And Poppy? Don't make me regret keeping you alive. I've killed for less than betrayal. Noted. She stepped backward into the gateway, felt reality invert around her, and let the Fey realm claim her once again. The transition was smoother this time, her body already learning the rhythm of crossing between worlds. Poppy landed on her feet in Valerian's court, which had transformed since her departure. The impossible palace was rebuilding itself, magic knitting cracks and smoothing damage, but there was something different about it now. Less hostile, less hungry, like a predator that had finally been fed after centuries of starvation. Valerian himself stood in the center of the throne room, surrounded by Fey courtiers who looked at Poppy with a mixture of reverence and fear. The moment he saw her, his expression shifted into something complicated. You came back, he said, and she couldn't tell if he was surprised or satisfied. The bindings brought me back. Don't flatter yourself. I wouldn't dream of it. He dismissed the courtiers with a gesture, waited until they were alone. How was your triumphant return to the mortal realm? Complicated, hostile, exactly what I expected. Poppy moved deeper into the room, feeling the bindings settle now that she was back in the realm that anchored them. Your realm is stabilizing. I can feel it. Because you're here. Your presence, your choice to return, it feeds the magic that keeps this place alive. Valerian descended from his throne with liquid grace. You've become exactly what I needed, what I spent centuries trying to create. And yet you don't seem happy about it. He was silent for a moment, studying her with those emerald eyes. Because it means I was wrong. About the methodology. About thinking I could force this outcome through manipulation. His voice dropped. You succeeded where I failed because you chose freely. Because you refused to accept the binary I presented. And that means 3 centuries of orchestrated cruelty was unnecessary, Poppy finished. Yeah, it was. The words hung between them, sharp and final. I can't undo what I did, Valerian said quietly. Can't bring back the 17 who died before you figured out the third path. Can't give you back the 3 months you spent cursed and hunted. All I can offer is acknowledgement that you were right and I was wrong. It wasn't an apology. The Fae didn't apologize. Couldn't, by their nature. But it was as close as he could come, and Poppy found herself respecting the honesty. What happens now? She asked. I maintain the bindings, split my time between realms, and we pretend this is normal. Nothing about this is normal, but yes, essentially. Valerian moved closer, and she could see the weight he carried, the centuries of isolation and desperate choices. You'll need training, the power you absorbed, the transformation you underwent. It's raw right now, unstable. I can teach you to control it, to use it without burning yourself out. In exchange for what? His smile was sad. Nothing. Consider it penance for what I put you through, or payment for saving my realm. Whichever sits easier with your conscience. Poppy studied him, looking for the trap, the angle, the manipulation. But all she saw was a being who'd been alone so long he'd forgotten how to be anything else. All right, she said finally. Teach me, but on one condition. Name it. You stop cursing girls. Stop manipulating desperate people into impossible choices. This realm is stable now because I chose to sustain it. That should be enough. Valerian's expression flickered, loss maybe, or grief for a strategy that had defined him for centuries. Then he nodded. Agreed. No more curses, no more trials, no more 17 girls dying because I couldn't see another way. He extended his hand. You have my word. Poppy took his hand, felt the cold of Fey flesh, the power that thrummed under his skin. The bargain sealed with a resonance she felt in her bones. Then let's begin, she said. Pashits. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Poppy wouldn't have believed possible. Days in the Fey realm, learning to control the magic that surged through her veins. Valerian was a patient teacher when he wanted to be, showing her how to channel power without letting it consume her, how to navigate Fey politics without getting trapped in their word games, how to exist between worlds without losing herself to either. Nights in the mortal realm, returning through the gateway to the castle where Kellen waited with updates on the kingdom's adjustment to her existence. The fear was fading slowly, replaced by cautious acceptance as people saw her come and go without causing destruction. The princesses visited regularly, bringing news and companionship. Alara especially seemed determined to ensure Poppy didn't isolate herself, dragging her to dinners and events, where she was forced to interact with nobles who still flinched when she entered a room. And Darius, the Alpha King, watched everything with his cold assessment, ready to intervene if she stepped out of line, but also acknowledging her value. She'd saved his sisters. That bought her more tolerance than anything else could have. But it was the resurrected girls who surprised her most. Mara had gathered the 16, formed them into something between support group and resistance movement. They met weekly in a forgotten corner of the castle, sharing stories of their transformations, their struggles to reintegrate into a world that had moved on without them. And they looked to Poppy as their center, their proof that survival was possible. "You're building something," Valerian observed one evening in the Fey realm, watching her prepare to return to the mortal world. A community of the transformed, the rejected, the ones who refused to stay in the boxes others built for them. "I'm not building anything," Poppy protested. They see in you what they want to become, someone who chose her own path and made it work." He smiled, and for once it held no cruelty. "That's power, wolf girl. More than magic. More than immortality. The power to inspire others to choose freedom." Poppy didn't know what to say to that. Months passed. The rhythm became routine. The bindings stabilized until maintaining them felt natural instead of draining. Her body settled into its new form. Not human, not fey, not wolf, but something that incorporated all three into a coherent whole. She learned to use the pendant to cross between realms at will, no longer needing the carved circle or Valerian's permission. Learned to speak with authority in both courts, earning respect through competence and refusal to be cowed. Learned, slowly and painfully, that she was building a life instead of just surviving. Og. The confrontation came on a frost-touched morning 6 months after her transformation. Poppy was in the castle courtyard, working through combat forms Valerian had taught her, part mortal technique, part fey grace, when she felt the disturbance. A ripple in the bindings, a wrongness that made her wolf instincts snarl. She grabbed the pendant, crossed to the fey realm in a heartbeat, and found chaos. The throne room was full of hostile fey, ones she didn't recognize, wearing armor that looked like it had been forged from nightmares. And at their center stood a figure that radiated power and malice in equal measure. Another fey king, older than Valerian, wilder, wearing his cruelty like a crown. "Ah," the stranger said, his voice like breaking bones. "The famous bridge girl. I was hoping to meet you before I destroyed this place." Valerian stood between the intruder and his throne, bleeding from wounds that hadn't been there moments ago. "Morrigan, this is neutral ground. You have no right." "I have every right. You stabilized your realm by binding it to mortal life. That makes it vulnerable. Weak." Morrigan's smile was all teeth. "And I've come to take advantage of that weakness." Poppy felt the bindings straining, felt this stranger pulling at them like testing ropes for breaking points. "You can't break them," she said, stepping forward despite every survival instinct screaming retreat. "They're tied to my choice, my will, not something you can just tear apart." "Can't I?" Morgan's eyes, black as void, fixed on her. "Let's test that theory." He struck without warning, power lashing out like a whip. It caught Poppy across the chest, drove her to her knees, pain exploding through every nerve. The binding shrieked in response, starting to fray. "Stop!" Valerian lunged, but Morrigan's guards intercepted him, drove him back. "This is what happens," Morrigan continued, voice conversational despite the violence. "When you tie your survival to mortal whims, they break so easily, and when she breaks, your realm collapses, and I claim the territory for myself." He struck again. This time Poppy tasted blood, felt something inside her crack. The bindings were unraveling, 6 threads simultaneously failing, and through them she could feel the princesses in the mortal realm starting to sicken again. No, she hadn't survived everything, transformed everything, sacrificed everything just to let some territorial predator destroy it all. Poppy reached deep into the place where her power lived, mortal,
fae, and wolf all tangled together and pulled. The magic that erupted from her was raw and absolute. She stood, blood streaming from her nose and ears, body glowing so bright it hurt to look at directly. The bindings didn't just stabilize, they reinforced, became steel instead of thread, anchored not to her survival, but to her choice to protect what she'd built. "You're right about one thing," Poppy said, her voice resonating with harmonics that shook the throne room. "Mortal things break easily, but I'm not just mortal anymore, and I choose not to break today." She attacked, not with technique or strategy, but with pure, overwhelming force. The power of three natures combined and focused into a single purpose: protect this realm, protect the people bound to it, protect the fragile balance she'd created. Morgan met her strike and staggered. His eyes widened, genuine shock crossing his face. "Impossible," he breathed. "You're barely transformed. You shouldn't have this much." "Shouldn't doesn't mean anything to me." Poppy hit him again, drove him back toward his guards. "I've spent my entire life being told what I should and shouldn't be able to do. I'm done listening." The fight that followed was brutal and brief. Morgan was older, more experienced, but Poppy had something he didn't: absolute conviction. She'd chosen this path, chosen these bindings, chosen to be the bridge between worlds, and she would defend that choice with everything she had. When Morgan finally fled, guards in tow, bleeding and diminished, Poppy collapsed to her knees in the sudden silence. Valerian was there immediately, catching her before she could fall completely. "That was either the bravest thing I've ever witnessed or the stupidest." "Both," Poppy gasped. "Definitely both. You could have died, fighting him at your current level. Would you rather I let him destroy everything?" She looked up at the Fey King, saw genuine concern in those emerald eyes. "This is my purpose. Maintaining the balance, protecting what I've built. I'm not backing down from that." Valerian studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, warm and genuine and utterly unlike his usual cruel mockery. "You're magnificent," he said softly. "Absolutely, terrifyingly magnificent." Poppy wanted to argue, wanted to deflect, but exhaustion won. She let him help her to her feet, let him support her weight as she steadied herself. "I need to check on the princesses," she said. "Make sure the bindings held when Morgan attacked them." "They held, because you held them." Valerian's expression was complex. "But yes, go. Return to your mortal concerns. I'll handle the political fallout here." Poppy nodded, pulled out the pendant, and crossed back to the mortal realm. She materialized in the princess's tower to find all 6 sisters awake and staring at her with wide eyes. "We felt it," Alara said immediately. "The bindings being attacked. We felt you fighting to protect them." "Are you all right?" Cassia asked, moving forward to examine Poppy's injuries. "I'm fine. Bindings are stable. Crisis averted." Poppy tried for a reassuring smile and suspected it came out more like a grimace. The princesses exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Then Alara spoke. "We need to talk. About what happens long term. About whether it's fair to keep you bound to us like this." Poppy's heart lurched. "What do you mean?" "We've been discussing it," another princess, Liana, the quiet one, said. "You saved us, gave us our lives back, but you're still carrying our burden, still splitting yourself between worlds to keep us alive. That's not sustainable. Not fair." "It's what I chose. 6 months ago, when you had limited options and were desperate to save us." Alara's voice was gentle but firm. "But circumstances change. You've built a life now, found purpose, and we're asking if you want to be released from the bindings. If there's another way to maintain the balance without tying you to us forever." The offer hung in the air, tempting and terrifying. Poppy could be free, could focus entirely on her own path without the constant pull of the bindings demanding attention, could choose how and when to interact with the Fey realm instead of being anchored to it by necessity. "But the bindings aren't just about keeping you alive," she said slowly. "They're the foundation of the balance between realms. Remove them, and I'm not sure what happens to the stability I created." "Then we find another foundation," Cassia said, with the determination of someone half her age. "We owe you that much, to at least try." Poppy looked at the 6 princesses, these women she'd saved, who'd become something like friends, who understood transformation because they'd lived it too.
Give me time, she said finally. Let me talk to Valerian, figure out if there's a way to maintain the realm's stability without the bindings. If there is, we'll break them. If there isn't, she took a breath. If there isn't, I'll keep carrying them. Because some responsibilities you don't walk away from just because they're hard. The princesses nodded, accepting her answer. As Poppy left the tower, she found Kellen waiting in the corridor. He looked older than when they'd first met. The weight of witnessing impossible things had aged him in ways that had nothing to do with time. I felt it too, he said. Whatever happened in the Fey realm, the whole castle shook. Hostile Fey King tried to break the bindings. I stopped him. Of course you did. Kellen's smile was tired but genuine. Do you ever not throw yourself into mortal danger? Not recently. He laughed, then sobered. Poppy, I need to tell you something. The tone made her nervous. What? I've been offered a position, captain of the Eastern Guard. It's an honor, career-making, everything I've worked toward. He met her eyes. But it means leaving the castle, leaving you. Something in Poppy's chest twisted. Kellen had been her constant through all of this, the one person who'd seen her at her worst and still chose to stand beside her. That's amazing, she managed. You deserve it. Do I? Because I feel like I'm abandoning you when you still need support. I don't need support anymore. I need friends, and friends celebrate when good things happen to each other. Poppy forced herself to smile despite the loss aching in her ribs. Take the position. Build your life. I'll still be here when you visit. Kellen looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to stay, but finally he nodded. I leave in 2 weeks. Let's make them count. The 2 weeks passed in a blur of farewells and preparations. Kellen left on a cold morning, riding east with his new command, and Poppy watched him go with pride and grief in equal measure. Another piece of her old life moving on while she remained caught between worlds. But she wasn't alone. The resurrected girls had formed something stronger than support group. They were building community, helping each other navigate transformation and rejection and the slow process of reclaiming their lives. And Poppy found herself at the center of it, not as leader, but as anchor, proof that survival was possible. The princesses continued their recovery, growing stronger every day, and maintained their offer to help find a way to break the bindings if Poppy wanted freedom. Darius granted her more and more autonomy, recognizing that she was valuable beyond just keeping his sisters alive. She'd become a bridge in more ways than one, between his kingdom and the Fey realm, between mortal and immortal, between fear and acceptance. And Valerian. The Fey King had become something unexpected. Not quite friend, not quite ally, but partner in maintaining the balance they'd created. He taught her, challenged her, pushed her to understand the full scope of what she'd become. 6 months became a year. The rhythms of her life settled into something that felt almost normal. Days in the Fey realm, learning and training. Nights in the mortal world, building community and connections. The constant dance between two existences that should have been incompatible, but somehow worked. One evening, standing in Valerian's court after particularly intense training, Poppy asked the question that had been building for months. Do you regret it? The centuries of manipulation and cruelty? Valerian was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands like they held answers he couldn't articulate. I regret the cost, he said finally. The 17 girls who died because I couldn't see the third path. The 300 years I spent convinced the only way to save my realm was through suffering. He looked up, met her eyes. But I don't regret the outcome. You. What you've become. What you've built. That's worth more than I sacrificed to find it. That's a terrible way to measure value. Perhaps, but it's the only way I know. He moved closer, his expression complex. You changed everything, Wolf Girl. Rewrote the rules I thought were absolute, and in doing so you freed me from a prison I didn't know I was in. Poppy understood then. Valerian had been as trapped as she'd been, by his role, his responsibilities, his conviction that cruelty was the only tool he had. Her choice to find another path had given him permission to imagine different possibilities. What happens now? She asked. Long term. Once the balance is fully stable and the bindings no longer need constant maintenance? Then you decide what kind of life you want to build, and He smiled, sad and genuine. I learned to rule a realm that doesn't require suffering to survive.
We both become something new. It wasn't a promise or a declaration, just acknowledgement that transformation was ongoing, that becoming something unprecedented meant constantly redefining what that meant. Poppy could live with that. The true resolution came on the anniversary of her transformation. 1 year since she'd merged the collar and key, since she'd forced mortality and immortality to coexist, since she'd chosen to be the bridge instead of accepting binary choices. The Fae Court threw a celebration, their version anyway, which involved music that made mortal ears bleed and wine that could alter perception if you drank too much. Poppy navigated it with the ease of practice, accepting congratulations from Fae who'd tried to kill her months ago and now treated her with wary respect. Valerian pulled her aside during the festivities, led her to a balcony that overlooked the impossible realm. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small box from nowhere. Poppy took it cautiously, opened it to find a second pendant, this one shaped like a wolf instead of a tree. "What is this?" "Your freedom. If you want it." Valerian's expression was unreadable. "I found a way to anchor the bindings to the realm itself instead of to you. This pendant contains the transfer spell. Use it, and you're released. No more splitting your existence. No more burden of maintaining balance. You can choose to stay in whichever world you prefer and never look back." Poppy stared at the wolf pendant, feeling the weight of the choice it represented. Freedom. Real, complete, absolute freedom. Everything she'd wanted when this started. "Why now?" she asked. "Because you've earned it. Because the realm is stable enough to survive without you. Because—" Valerian's voice dropped. "Because I don't want you here out of obligation. If you stay, I want it to be because you choose to, not because you're bound." The irony wasn't lost on Poppy. The Fae King, who'd spent centuries binding others through manipulation, was now offering her the one thing he'd never given anyone else: genuine choice. She closed the box, held it in her palm, felt the potential it contained. Then she handed it back. "Keep it," she said. Valerian's eyes widened. "You're refusing freedom?" "I'm refusing that version of freedom. The one where I have to choose one world and abandon the other." Poppy moved to stand beside him at the balcony, looking out over the realm she'd helped save. "I spent my whole life being forced into categories. Human or monster, victim or survivor, mortal or fae. I'm done with that binary thinking." "So what do you want?" "To be the bridge. Not because I'm bound to it, but because I choose it. Because connecting worlds, helping the transformed, building something unprecedented. That's my purpose. That's what makes me feel whole." She looked at him. "So thank you for the offer, for respecting me enough to give me the choice. But I'm choosing to stay, on my terms, as my decision." For a long moment, Valerian stared at her. Then he smiled, warm and genuine and utterly transformed from the cruel mockery she'd first encountered. "You're remarkable," he said softly. "Absolutely, impossibly remarkable." "I know." He laughed, the sound bright and clear, and Poppy realized this was what freedom actually looked like. Not the absence of bindings, but the presence of choice. The ability to decide what responsibilities to carry and which to release. She'd been given the option to walk away, and choosing to stay made the staying mean something different. That night, Poppy returned to the mortal realm and found the resurrected girls gathered in their usual meeting place. Mara looked up when she entered, read something in her expression. "You look different," she said. "What happened?" "I was offered freedom, complete release from the bindings." The room went silent. "And?" one of the other girls prompted. "And I chose to stay bound, but on my own terms, as my decision instead of my obligation." Poppy sat among them, these women who understood transformation intimately. "Because I realized freedom isn't about having no ties. It's about choosing which ties matter and honoring them deliberately." Mara nodded slowly. "That's the third path again. Not free or bound, but choosing the binding that serves you." "Exactly." The conversation that followed was long and complex, full of questions about choice and purpose and how to build lives that honored both. But through it all, Poppy felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. She'd found her place, not in the mortal realm or the Fae Court, but in the space between. The bridge connecting worlds, helping others navigate transformation, proving that unprecedented things were possible. Months later, Poppy stood in the castle courtyard teaching combat forms to a mixed group of mortals and resurrected girls. The sun was warm on her face, and her body moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd integrated all their contradictions into coherent whole. Darius watched from the battlements, his expression approving. The princesses had joined the training session, laughing as they struggled with techniques that came naturally to Poppy. And in the distance, she could feel Valerian's realm pulsing with stable magic, the bindings humming contentedly. Kellen had written from his new post, describing his successes and asking when she'd visit. The resurrected girls were spreading out across the kingdom, carrying their transformed perspectives to new places. And every day brought new challenges, new opportunities to prove that being the bridge meant something. As the training session ended and the group dispersed, Poppy found herself alone in the courtyard for a moment. She touched the golden tree pendant at her throat, felt the wolf pendant Valerian had eventually given her hanging beside it, not as escape, but as reminder that she could choose to leave if the burden ever became too heavy. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was purpose, identity, the thing that made her who she was instead of limiting who she could become. Poppy Ashvale. Red eyes, the bridge, the wolf girl who refused to accept binary choices and built something unprecedented from the wreckage of impossible circumstances. She'd been cursed, hunted, rejected, and transformed. And she'd survived it all by choosing to be complex instead of simple, by refusing to fit into categories others built for her, by finding the third path when everyone else saw only two options. The wolf inside her purred contentment. The fey magic hummed satisfaction. The mortal heart beat steady and strong. All three voices, harmonized at last. Poppy smiled, squared her shoulders, and walked back into the castle to face whatever came next. She'd learned the most important lesson of all, that true power wasn't about choosing between who you were and who you could become. It was about choosing to be both, simultaneously, without apology or compromise. And that choice, more than any magic or transformation, had made her free.